One Caspian Vance merely scribbles his signature on a standard military enlistment form, yet somehow those few letters manage to give Viridia's high command a collective heart attack. Even their elite Black Ops units deploy, fully armed and locked into a state of extreme combat readiness. Facing this apocalyptic threat, Caspian stays calm. His desk mate, absolutely terrified by the sudden military invasion, completely freezes up. He yells out, "I confess everything." This outburst shocks all the surrounding students. To gasp in sheer disbelief. What kind of insane war crime did this kid commit to warrant an entire army of elite tactical squads? Honestly, his desk mate is hilarious. Immediately spills his actual secrets. He cries about taking out sketchy online payday loans to buy video game loot boxes, calling it a total debt trap. He claims he kept taking loans to pay loans, begging them to believe he had no idea that borrowing online was some kind of federal crime. This utterly brain-dead confession leaves everyone present utterly speechless. Jaws are completely glued to the floor. Caspian sighs. Could this idiot not even read the room? Before confessing to minor financial blunders, dozens of pitch-black gun barrels are pointed squarely at his head. They order him to drop his bag and come with them immediately. Nearby, Serafina Frost is absolutely thrilled, recording the entire spectacle on her phone. Thousands of elite special forces soldiers descending on a college campus just to arrest one student. This is completely unheard of. Soon, Caspian is escorted straight into a secure interrogation room. Sitting on the chair, he looks incredibly relaxed. Director Roderick stares at him with a deadly serious expression, demanding to know what Caspian Vance did during his summer vacation. Caspian just thinks for a second, offering no reply. In fact, a moment later, he actually falls fast asleep. Director Roderick storms over and smacks him awake, stating they received some highly classified intel. On the global mercenary leaderboard, an operative using the codename Reborn has suddenly shot up to the 8th spot worldwide. Every single refresh of that list grabs massive global attention. Caspian just props his head up on his hand, peacefully shutting his eyes once more. This blatant disrespect immediately infuriates several high-ranking officers in the room. Chief Gideon's gaze is deep and intense as he asks Caspian Vance to cooperate. Hearing this, the young man lazily opens one eye, asking if they have actual proof that this mercenary is him. Director Roderick casually tosses a classified file on the table, demanding to know why a citizen of Viridia would act as a mercenary abroad. Caspian just waves his hand, saying he did it for fast cash. Roderick is absolutely fuming, looking ready to drag him outside and execute him right there. Suddenly, Caspian remembers today's military recruitment. Given his highly unique situation, he asks if he can still join Viridia's forces. Roderick's mouth twitches violently. Joining the military depends entirely on how cooperative he is during this investigation. Caspian silently wonders if he hasn't already been the absolute model of cooperation. Roderick continues his interrogation, demanding to know exactly what the boy did during his vacation. Without even pausing to think, Caspian easily rattles off vacation. Without a single pause, Caspian casually admits to recovering some stolen satellite microchips, escorted a mafia cartel boss back to the country, and even helped recover highly classified documents while providing some overseas rescue assistance for fellow compatriots. Oh, and he also casually dismantled a human trafficking syndicate. Silence fell. The surrounding area went completely dead silent, like the oxygen had been vacuumed right out. Everyone stared at him like frozen statues. After a long, tense moment, man claps sarcastically, mocking Caspian's absolute nonsense. Don't think being the 8th-ranked mercenary lets you blow hot air like that. Caspian shrugs. They asked for the truth, yet they choose to doubt him. The interrogator demands to know if he has accomplices. Caspian answers with complete honesty. Just one man. In the underworld, one is more than enough. Director Roderick's expression darkens. Honestly, who would actually believe this wild story? He decides to go up the chain to analyze Reborn heavily, suspecting this is an entire tactical team, not a solo player. Seeing he cannot squeeze anything else out of Caspian, Director Roderick leaves. The interrogator, however, continues to press him. A few days ago, a criminal overlord in the Iron Triangle died a gruesome death. Did Caspian have anything to do with it? Caspian shakes his head honestly, claiming he did not lift a finger against the man. It was a mutiny by his own underlings. At most, he just went with the flow, offering a tiny gift to speed up the process. The interrogator questions him sternly, so by that logic Caspian actually did a good deed and helped them achieve internal unity, sure. Of course, Caspian replies, he signed a gentleman's agreement with them, meaning they are strictly forbidden from expanding their distribution network into Viridia. Shouldn't they be thanking him? The interrogator replies with heavy sarcasm, thanking him and promising to custom-make a shiny silk banner for him tomorrow. Just then Director Roderick returns to the interrogation room, his aura noticeably milder. He addresses Caspian Vance, asking about a special ops ambush a month ago where a stateless mercenary provided their troops with a rescue helicopter. Caspian rests his chin on his hand and thinks for a moment. Oh, that time he was just passing by, since they are all from Viridia, he couldn't just leave them. Now Director Roderick confirms it once more, asking if it was truly him. Caspian shoots him a sideways glance, mentioning 4 commandos in yellow tactical uniforms located at the inland Turgust Bay in Valyria. Roderick's face changes drastically. Talk about instant shock. He demands to know who Caspian is. He lazily replies he is a junior at Seacoast University. Gideon's expression turns solemn, realizing Caspian is completely bulletproof to their tactics. Sighing helplessly, Gideon has no choice but to let him go while keeping a tight watch on him. Caspian stretches lazily and grabs his backpack, asking if his enlistment form got wrinkled. The interrogator snaps back in a grumble. Not at all. Meanwhile, a journalism major named Seraphina Frost, who was camping out, sees him walk out and immediately rushes over, camera rolling. She asks him what kind of massive emergency caused so many SWAT officers to come looking for him, but Caspian has zero intention of. He keeps her entertained, pulling out his cracked phone to call a cab. Back on campus, a crowd of curious classmates quickly gathers. They ask if he is actually some undercover spy. Caspian calmly puts down his book, calling it a simple misunderstanding. They arrested the wrong guy, but seriously, who would believe that massive cinematic spectacle? He gives them a cold, indifferent stare. Why else would he be here? The students are speechless. At that moment, Caspian still has no idea that he is already the center of attention across the entire internet. The moment he steps outside, 2 girls are pointing their cameras at him. They film from a distance. Heading to the recruitment office, he hands over his completed enlistment form to Director Silas. The director takes it and sets it aside, warning him to prepare for the check. The background check is brutal, but Caspian just nods and leaves. The next morning, he enters the classroom. Something is off. Usually empty, the lecture hall is packed to the brim. Everyone stares with suspicion and curiosity, whispering in the back. Some are secretly filming. Caspian ignores them and immediately falls asleep. Suddenly, the old professor knocks on the blackboard. Wake up. He yells at the kid filming and tells Caspian to wake up. Answer the question. Barnaby immediately nudges Caspian hard with his elbow. Still half asleep, Caspian stands up, staring at the complex problem. Whispers erupt. That half-board of advanced calculus is impossible. It would take a miracle, but in his half-asleep state, Caspian starts rattling off the perfect answer for 10 solid minutes straight. The professor nods repeatedly, calling his accurate conclusion excellent. But he still criticizes him, warning him to stop sleeping like that. Sleeping in that exact posture is terrible for his cervical spine. Facing the drafty window like that could cause facial paralysis. Who wouldn't be speechless? He sleeps, yet the teacher only worries about his posture. Then the professor invites him onto his project, holding up 3 fingers. Instantly, the surrounding students start grumbling in deep envy. $3,000, not a fortune, but plenty for a normal student. Barnaby sighs, telling them they missed a 0 on that figure. Every single face in the crowd instantly freezes solid. Where is the justice in this world? They work their hearts out, yet still fall short. They cannot compare to a guy who literally sleeps through every single day. Caspian just smiles and politely declines, thanking the professor anyway. He prefers his freedom. Being chained to a lab simply does not suit him. That night, he heads to his part-time job at the internet cafe, where the clerk spots him. He hands over a toolbox, telling him to check computers 12, 13, and 2. They keep blacking out. Caspian takes the tools, fixing them within half an hour. With everything running perfectly, he glances over and spots Seraphina. His stalker has fallen fast asleep. Caspian quietly sits in a blind spot. He types in a highly encrypted URL and plugs in his external drive. Instantly, a massive cascade of digital data floods the screen. A few minutes later, an interface resembling a basic chat application pops up. He had not logged in for days, but over 40 people were already waiting to hire him. They wanted him for dangerous missions, but one specific request catches his attention. Destroy the Vorlandia fraud syndicate for $5 million. Knowing that all the victims of this evil syndicate were his fellow Viridian citizens, he quickly types back, accepting the job but demanding one critical condition. The client replies instantly, and he demands 80% of the seized funds. The other side falls completely silent for a moment before sending a reply. They tell him his price is far too high and their superiors will never agree. He types back calmly, guaranteeing the total and absolute elimination of their target. No one else can promise this, because in the brutal mercenary world, 0%, the name Reborn means a flawless success rate. The client considers the terms and agrees, but demands a fast and ruthless blitzkrieg strike. He accepts immediately, leaving the contact on the other end completely stunned. Silence, then they finally agree to do everything exactly his way. Over the next few days, he juggles multiple low-paying, part-time jobs. Working past midnight daily, he spent his hours shaking boba at a tea shop. Or he was busy mopping floors at a gym while the internet obsession faded. And right when things quiet down, he gets a call from the recruitment office. No choice, his military physical is scheduled for October. Scheduled for the 5th, meaning he urgently needs to rearrange his entire calendar. He has to finish his jobs by the 3rd and head back on the 4th. After catching several transit buses, he arrives at an unfinished, abandoned concrete building. He heads straight down to the basement, stopping directly in front of a solid brick wall. Swiping a keycard against one specific brick, the hidden elevator suddenly activates. It materializes right out of thin air, revealing a hidden facility with 4 floors. He presses the button for the 3rd floor and steps out into a high-tech lair. Pure Matrix vibes, dozens of monitors and advanced gear cover the walls. The main central computer constantly tracks international black market transactions. He takes a quick, casual glance before moving past the screens. Then he heads down to the 2nd floor to prepare his tactical combat gear. By 2 in the morning, he drives out in a pitch-black Jeep to begin his mission. Meanwhile, the 2 plainclothes detectives monitoring his location follow his tracker to the dorm. Empty, the entire dorm room is completely abandoned and dark. A dead phone lies inside the locker, and you can bet they completely panic. With pure panic, they immediately dial Director Roderick's personal number. Reporting that their target is gone, Roderick quickly alerts Chief Gideon, asking the National Security Chief if they have any active movement on Reborn. Nothing, Chief Gideon sighs, admitting they have found absolutely nothing. By the next day, Reborn is already sitting on a speedboat in the open ocean. At the wheel is Balthazar, an old, trusted friend from his mercenary days. He logs back into his secure mercenary account to check for any updates. The client has sent over a brand new scheduled time for the operation. Suddenly, a red tracker on the main monitor back home flashes wildly. Reborn is online, and Roderick immediately demands his exact coordinates. Suddenly, they locked straight onto his coordinates, right at the border of Vorlandia. If he is there, a literal war is about to break out. Officials from National Security, Director Zhao, and the Public Security Department all huddled together, wondering what he was doing out there, another gang war. Then a report flashed. A massive sum was just transferred from Reborn's account. After cross-referencing multiple sources, they realized it was one of the Vorlandia fraud syndicates receiving accounts before they could even process. The connection Reborn's account received that exact same massive sum back. Meanwhile, Caspian was currently busy tracing the transaction path, injecting an ILP virus into the enemy network, causing their entire system to experience a catastrophic meltdown. Next, he took a flying leap into the vast open ocean. Watching this, Balthazar muttered under his breath that they were still 5 or 6 nautical miles from the coast. Caspian Vance was an absolute lunatic, actually swimming the entire rest of the way, a total monster. Deep in Vorlandia, he had single-handedly turned their whole fraud syndicate utterly upside down. Their network was paralyzed and key office buildings were blown to kingdom come, while dozens of mercenaries and hired thugs never even caught a single glimpse of his shadow. See, 3 years ago, he bound himself to a system, completing 1,000 push-ups for 100% marksmanship skill. The more skills he accumulated, the more overpowered he became, starting out with basic thief-catching missions. He climbed all the way to rank 8. On the global mercenary leaderboard, right now he possessed dozens of insane god-tier skills. He had to crash this party entirely solo. Non-stop explosions rocked the entire fraud syndicate. Suddenly, the guard standing next to Boss Viper swayed and collapsed. The terrified boss clutched his briefcase, huddling into a tight ball, and looked around frantically, begging to talk and offering money. Another guard, his chest blooming with dark crimson, collapsed right at the boss's feet. Out stepped Caspian, wearing custom-designed bulletproof tactical gear. He calmly asked why they did it if they knew this day would come. The fraud boss was so incredibly terrified, he turned to pure jelly. He stammered, realizing this was the legendary mercenary Reborn. He did not know his face, but the unique gear was a total giveaway. He trembled uncontrollably, kowtowing desperately and begging him for mercy, offering all of his money. Caspian stared down with eyes cold as ice, asking him directly if human lives could really just be measured by a bunch of numbers. Next second, bang, the boss stared in horror, his body slumping heavily to the side. "Save your repentance for the Grim Reaper," Caspian calmly muttered. Afterward, he pulled out his phone and snapped photos of the dead boss from various angles to save as solid proof. Then he swaggered straight into the main office and initiated full refunds of all scammed cash from the past 3 years to the victims. 3 days later, every surviving member of the broken syndicate was either fully wrapped in bandages or hobbling on crutches. Over 100 thugs stood miserably in the central plaza. Caspian stood on the roof of a car, holding it. Through a giant megaphone, he asks if they finally realized their mistakes over these past days. Everyone shouts in flawless unison that they were wrong and will never commit fraud again. Then he continues, stating he submitted all their profiles anonymously to the authorities, so the relevant departments will soon pick them up for a nice long vacation behind bars, making the crowd instantly let out a collective wail of despair. But this massive base cannot go to waste, so starting today, they will embrace a brand new career path. Those with brute strength must stand in one line, those who are nimble stand in another, and those with quick reflexes line up over there. Then he adds lazily, telling them to convert these offices into a hotel. The strong ones are porters, going to the docks to carry luggage for the tourists. The nimble are the cleaning crew, and the quick ones are the drivers taking tourists sightseeing around the country. The crowd is left dumbfounded. He is basically turning a massive criminal empire into minimum wage labor camp. He narrows his eyes, asking dangerously if there are objections. Everyone shake their heads so fast they look like bobbleheads, gasping they would not dare. That very day, Vorlandia's local news broadcasts a shocking headline. The region's largest fraud syndicate officially declares bankruptcy today. The remaining over 100 members have established a tourism hotel and are currently doing community service by picking up trash on the streets back home. The staff at the National Security Bureau stare at the video footage in dead silence. October 4th, 10 p.m., he switches to his final mode of transportation. Getting impatient, he tells the driver his speed is slower than an old ox plowing a field, demanding to drive. The driver's speed and speech are equally sluggish. He refuses, saying since he took his money, it would be embarrassing to let him drive. The next second, Caspian grabs him by the collar, lifts him up and tosses him into the backseat. He slams the gas and the speedometer instantly pins to 150. The 3 strangers are scared out of their minds, begging him to slow down, but his brain is entirely focused on tomorrow morning's physical exam. He drives like a bat out of hell, forcefully compressing a 12-hour road trip into a mere 5 hours. Fellow passenger shakily points a finger at him, taking other people's rides costs money, but taking his ride costs lives. He couldn't care less. Grabbing his luggage and sprinting all the way, he finally makes it to his apartment at 6 a.m. He puts all his tactical weapons away, takes a shower, changes his clothes, and heads back to the dorm. Barnaby glances at him groggily, thinking he is dreaming since the holiday isn't even over yet. How could Caspian Vance be in the dorm? Caspian shakes his head, saying don't forget the 9. A military physical. Then he goes downstairs, rents a shared bike, and pedals to the recruitment office. Just as he arrives, he hears the roll call starting. When Barnaby is called, Caspian wonders if that idiot is really not Going to show up, suddenly a figure comes panting and wheezing, crashing to a halt in front of director Silas, gasping he is late. Silas looks highly displeased, snapping that he is 5 minutes late. Does someone with no concept of time even have the right to be a soldier? Barnaby apologizes profusely, promising he guarantees this is the absolute last time, returning to the formation. Barnaby stood right behind Caspian, grinding his teeth and asking why he did not wait. Caspian just gave him a cool side-eye glance. Why wait so they could both be late? Barnaby flushed bright red, muttering that he stayed up way too late playing games last night. He simply could not wake up this morning. Caspian let out a helpless, heavy sigh. Caspian told Barnaby to take that money from his online loan and do something useful, like getting his brain checked instead of buying game skins. Meanwhile, the physical exam dragged on until 3 p.m., just as Caspian went to grab food with Barnaby. Director Roderick intercepted them. Left with no other choice, Caspian followed him. Inside the car, Roderick demanded to know where Caspian Vance had run off to lately. He claimed he was home. Roderick sneered, "Is your home in Vorlandia?" Caspian replied with a total poker face, saying Vorlandia sounded quite nice. Retiring there actually sounded great. Director Roderick glared at him coldly. He told Caspian to cut the smart attitude and handed him a local news report. In the video, those same brutal thugs, who once wielded machetes and batons, were now holding brooms and mops, sweeping up the streets and alleys. Someone was secretly filming them, absolutely terrified of getting caught. But instead, the group looked like they were injected with pure adrenaline, turning straight to the camera to chant loud and clear, "Protect the environment, it is everyone's responsibility." This bizarre spectacle completely terrified the passing pedestrians, who ran for their lives. Caspian could not help but chuckle. Their execution was pretty solid. Roderick narrowed his eyes, saying he knew Caspian was pulling the strings. Just a little casual side quest, Caspian teased. That night he returned home. After submitting the photos as proof, he finally completed the mission. He reminded the client to leave a 5-star review to help him rank up. The client happily agreed, promising to introduce more business in the future. Feeling generous, Caspian promised a 20% discount on their next deal. The next morning, Caspian was sleeping on his desk when suddenly, he was nudged awake by Barnaby's elbow. His old friend was back again. Yawning, he looked toward the door and saw the familiar face of Chief Gideon. Caspian wondered why he was having nightmares before even waking up. Smiling warmly, Gideon noted that Caspian had a very busy October holiday. Caspian yawned again, calling it quite fulfilling, too busy to even sleep. Gideon remarked, handing over a document. It showed the login history for Reborn. Location history, which instantly woke him up. Gideon noted Caspian returned just for his military physical, meaning he took the opportunity very seriously. Hearing this, Caspian straightened up. The mercenary stuff was just a side gig. Becoming a soldier was his actual main quest. Chief Gideon chuckled, telling him straight that his background check would not pass. Caspian stubbornly questioned if they were absolutely sure about that. After all, he had not committed any domestic crimes. Gideon stared back, silently saying Caspian should thank his lucky stars he was not arrested. The Viridian military simply does not allow potential hidden dangers in their ranks. Caspian let out a soft chuckle, calling it a real pity. With that, he turned and left the stunned room far behind him. Silas stared solemnly at Caspian's file. Suddenly, his phone rang right inside the recruitment office. It was Commander Reginald, asking if Silas still remembered him. Director Silas immediately snapped to attention with deep respect. Of course he remembered, Silas said, asking if there were any instructions today. The caller chuckled, saying he would not beat around the bush because they had their eyes on a kid named Caspian Vance. Director Silas was utterly shocked, asking if the commander planned to transfer Caspian under his direct command, but Reginald refused, calling Caspian an unpredictable wild card with a massive ego that needed crushing, grinding down in the regular military system to break his immense arrogance. Director Silas nervously tried to remind him of Caspian's secret identity as a reborn mercenary, but Commander Reginald calmly replied that he already knew way more about that. Silas just had to pass him, and Reginald would handle the rest. Meanwhile, ever since returning from Chief Gideon's office, Caspian had been feeling quite down. Finally, the day of the draft results arrived. Barnaby dragged Caspian out of bed early, yelling that it was already 8 o'clock. But Caspian just rolled over, thinking he was likely a hopeless case. That loudmouth was too loud, complaining about the lag after refreshing 8 times. He was highly anxious. Barnaby's constant whining completely woke Caspian up. The university recruitment chat was already flooded, with hundreds of messages, with people constantly reposting the login link. Caspian logged in, it succeeded. Suddenly his eyes went wide. And his body shot up, he actually passed. Oh, what a twist. Just then a loud howl erupted from the lower bunk as Barnaby started crying. He was overjoyed because they got into the same military camp together. Caspian was genuinely shocked. After working so hard, his wish finally came true. Now he could protect Viridia. 3 days later, he reported for duty, packed his bags, and joined the main transport caravan on the train. Everyone got acquainted. There were 132 recruits in total, including 34 university students and 98 regular privates. Barnaby was a total social butterfly, strolling through the train to quickly make friends. Caspian, on the other hand, spent the entire journey quietly reading a book. A few hours later, they arrived at the 76th Group Army Ground Force training base. Everyone carried their heavy bags, looking around wide-eyed, like complete country bumpkins, as they listened to the reception officer, Captain Jackson Briggs, introduce the base rules. The mess hall was strictly off-limits, outside of designated meal times, and their dorms were inside Building 3. The scenery was great, with a massive mountain sitting right out back. Even the culinary squad raised sheep and poultry over on those slopes. After that introduction, everyone hauled dozens of pounds of heavy luggage. Wandering aimlessly around the massive base for a full hour, people were panting. Everyone was sweating buckets. Still, they grit their teeth and endured it, until the captain finally brought them to Building 3 after their grand tour. The dorms were 8-person rooms, and Barnaby was assigned to Caspian's room. Caspian was about to toss his bag onto the lower bunk near the door, when a complete stranger suddenly cut in and claimed it. Oh, here we go. Someone claims the first bed, so Caspian keeps a straight face and heads for the other lower bunk. But that one gets instantly snatched up by another recruit as well. It is totally obvious now, these guys are clearly targeting him. Right then, his friend Barnaby, who secured a lower bunk, frantically waves him over. Offering up his spot, Barnaby lets Caspian vault right onto his upper bunk. Talk about a rough start. Bad blood is already brewing here. Once everyone unpacks, squad leader Leon Cross walks in to lay down the law. He demands absolute perfection. Every single wash basin must be aligned perfectly. The locker tops must be completely spotless, with zero dust in sight. Daily inspections start immediately, and then he hands out the military regulation manuals. Memorize every single word starting today, he loudly barks. Chapter 1, General Principles, must be memorized before the leader leaves. Headaches, instant massive headaches, set in for the other 6 recruits. Between the assembly, meals, and organizing, their afternoon is completely packed. They have absolutely zero time to even open the regulation booklet. No spot check at midnight, forget it, they need some sleep. But Caspian grabs his manual and quietly slips out, with Barnaby following right behind. Barnaby is worried. He asks if a spot check is coming. Caspian casually reminds him that in the military, anything can happen. Besides, as top scholars from Seacoast University, memorizing this is child's play. Sudden trouble, they run straight into Julian Pierce, the instigator. Julian is the classic slacker who wants to drag everyone else down. If he cannot succeed, he wants everyone else to fail too. He mocks them, calling them university nerds sneaking out at midnight. Caspian just gives him a cold, sweeping glance and drops a harsh truth. In a race, the lazy pig runs the slowest and gets sent to the butcher. Caspian just walks away. He leaves Julian standing there completely fuming. How dare Caspian compare him to a stupid, lazy pig? At 6 a.m. the next morning, the loud reveille horn blares across the camp. Instead of a hot breakfast, a massive, miserable queue awaits the recruits. Suddenly, Sergeant Leon Cross announces coldly, "Only those who can recite Chapter 1 of the regulations get to eat. Recite it and shout report to enter, or stand there and just smell the food." Caspian stands at the very back of the line, watching his miserable squad mates. Despair fills the air, then a sudden report rings out. Julian Pierce points maliciously, claiming his roommate Caspian can recite it. Leon Cross frowns, asking why Julian is shouting instead of letting Caspian speak. The sergeant walks straight up to Caspian to put him on the spot. Demanding to hear it, Caspian begins reciting with flawless, crystal-clear accuracy. He speaks so smoothly, it sounds like he is reading directly from the book. Flawless recital, Leon raises an eyebrow in sheer surprise at Caspian. Leon points at Caspian, telling the others that this is how you pass. The other recruits grit their teeth, glaring jealously at Caspian as he heads inside. Enemies? On day one, he has already made enemies of everyone. Fortunately, Barnaby manages to stumble his way through the recital and pass too. Crowds of recruits stood outside the mess hall, starving and glaring murderously. They clutched their manuals, trying to memorize them. Then came the physical. Training instructor Gareth Black announced coldly a 5-kilometer cross-country run with a 40-minute limit. Failures cleaned the sheep pens today. This training gave Julian and his buddies massive confidence boost. What else could those bookworms do besides memorize texts? Liam walked up and dragged Julian to the very back of the formation, telling him since he loved talking, he could be the counter. Every sigh and groan would count as 10 words, adding 1 minute to their time. He wanted to see who cleaned the sheep pens. At the whistle, everyone started jogging around the mountain. Caspian was positioned near the back, just a few runners away from Julian. At first, everything was normal. After 20 minutes, the physical toll set in. People started asking how many meters were left and complaining of cramps. Julian was absolutely exhausted, but he strictly upheld his duty, gleefully drawing tally marks on the backs of those who complained. Barnaby was already panting like a broken bellows, completely out of breath. Caspian was entirely unfazed, having not even broken a sweat. Long-distance running requires regulating your breathing, inhaling for 3 steps, exhaling for 3 steps. The guys running behind him started matching his rhythm. Slowly, they realized it genuinely did not feel as agonizing as before. A few of them began praising him. They whispered that Caspian was amazing. He quickly shushed them and pointed at Julian behind them. By now, Julian was red-faced and utterly exhausted. Yet he could not hide the sinister smirk on his lips. Barnaby worried that the bastard Julian was definitely going to target Caspian next. Gradually, their small group moved from the back of the pack all the way to the middle, leaving Julian further and further behind. The group following Caspian's pace slowly expanded to over 30 people. To match the speed of the majority, Caspian practically had to slow to a brisk walk. They completed the task right at the 40-minute mark. That is the worst passing score for a recruit, but there were still 8 privates who failed to meet the standard. Among them was Julian Pierce. Yet Julian swaggered over and handed Leon a list with an arrogant attitude, reporting that this was the list of people who spoke, with Caspian Vance speaking the most. Leon glanced between the two of them, then called out 3 other names from the list. Caspian Vance, Jasper, Quinn, Caleb Reed, and the 8 failures were all assigned to sheep pen duty. Today, Leon lined everyone up, explaining he had promised the culinary squad that their recruit company would take over the sheep pens for the entire month. Everyone's mouths twitched. Couldn't he have promised something better? Next, they began formation training. Just standing at attention took up the entire morning. The instructor barked that they could not even stand at ease properly, calling them trash. Having finally survived the morning, the crowd shuffled toward the mess hall like zombies, only to face yet another interrogation on internal regulations. The resentment looming over them was palpable. Inside the mess hall there was dead silence. Only the sound of chopsticks hitting metal trays could be heard. Even though the food was pretty basic, they devoured every single leaf of cabbage down to the roots. Leaving the mess hall, Barnaby asked curiously if Caspian was tired at all. Caspian countered that this was just basic foundational stuff, so why would he be tired? Barnaby stared with wide eyes in absolute disbelief, wondering if he was possessed by a war god. Back at the dorms, just as they dragged their exhausted bodies into bed, the assembly whistle yanked everyone right back up. His bones were practically falling apart, and they would not even let them nap. A group of dejected recruits gathered downstairs as Captain Jackson Briggs barked out sternly. They could not even memorize rules because their stamina was holding them back. Did they plan to just act as bullet delivery boys on the battlefield? Many felt pretty indignant. They were just fresh recruits after all. Why treat them like hardened veterans? The dissatisfaction was written all over their faces. Briggs declared they would not rest. He was showing them how veterans train. The captain led them to another training field where a group of Veterans was practicing their military stance, marching in perfect uniform. Goose steps, the synchronized sound of their boots hitting the ground made the earth tremble. Quickly, the front row stepped forward. Simultaneously raising their rifles at the firing line, the instructor blew the whistle and everyone fired in perfect sync. At 500 meters, every single person hit the dead center, the 10 ring, finally seeing the rifles they had been dreaming of. The recruits' eyes filled with awe. They wondered when they would ever reach that level. Caspian was the only one who remained completely expressionless from start to finish. Jackson scoffed coldly, asking if they saw the massive skill gap. He added that with how useless they were, they should not even dream of reaching this level of marksmanship in their lives. A few hot-headed recruits in the ranks muttered that they had just joined, and if they trained as long, they would definitely be on their level. They claimed anyone could shoot a gun. Jackson let out a cold laugh, challenging their sudden wave of confidence. Why did they not challenge the veterans? This statement instantly boosted the recruits' morale. They agreed, though 500 meters seemed a bit too far. So the captain offered them a 200-meter mark instead, asking who wanted to step up. Upon hearing this, practically no one volunteered, though there was plenty of jeering. Some even looked toward Caspian, and yeah, everyone wanted answers. Mysterious, asking if he had some hidden trump card to win them some glory. Caspian faintly replied that he had never really played with those, calling them antique relics from his grandmother's era. The weapons he used were the latest state-of-the-art tech. At this, Julian sneered sarcastically, asking if they actually expected Caspian to pull a miracle out of his hat. Several people asked Julian curiously if he had ever even touched a gun before. When it came to crunch time, they relied on him, but the actual weight of the rifle took Julian completely by surprise. He had only ever been to specialized shooting ranges to shoot lightweight sporting rifles. The heavy metallic mass made his arms buckle. Caspian stood to the side, maintaining a complete poker face. Julian's firing stance was wrong and his arm tension was completely off. Bang, the bullet had not even. The bullet nose-dived straight into the dirt. Caspian helplessly shook his head. With such garbage skills, how did Julian dare act like their savior? His annoyed face caught Julian's buddy. The guy sneered, demanding what right Caspian Vance had to mock anyone. He called Caspian smug, saying Julian at least stepped up, before Caspian could even reply. Jackson sharply reprimanded them, asking if this was how recruits treated each other. Blaming each other, starting a civil war. Fighting on the battlefield just because they disagreed on which direction to walk. The scolded recruits hung their heads, looking like a bunch of frostbitten eggplants. They fell silent while Julian stood there pale and completely humiliated. Meanwhile, the veterans watched, absolutely amused. Mockery intensified. Caspian stepped forward. Every eye locked onto him as Julian gritted his teeth. "Get back here," Julian hissed, "stop embarrassing us," but Caspian caught the rifle. His textbook grip and stance were absolutely flawless. The clueless recruits failed to notice, mockingly telling him to drop the pose. They bet he couldn't even see the target. But the veterans recognized his highly professional stance and were deeply shocked. Bang, necks craned to see if he hit. Some thought he hit the board, while Leon and Jackson raised their binoculars. Peering through the lenses, Jackson asked Caspian how he thought he did. Caspian casually called it average, claiming a measly 200 meters was absolute child's play. He could easily shoot that blindfolded, sending the recruits into loud boos. They told him to keep bragging. Suddenly, Jackson's mouth twitched. He announced the score, 10 rings. The veterans were completely stunned. The recruits stared at Caspian like he was a ghost. A former pen cleaner stepping in sheep dung yesterday suddenly has insane luck. Hearing this, Jackson challenged Caspian to try the 300-meter mark. Caspian stayed completely silent, seemingly lost in deep thought. The recruits assumed he chickened out. "At least he's smart enough to quit while he's ahead," they sneered. Julian sarcastically agreed, fully expecting the arrogant kid to be completely exposed at 300 meters. "If you lack the skills, do not drag us down with you." Barnaby couldn't stand listening to their garbage anymore and finally snapped. "Caspian just saved your ass, so stop crying." Then Caspian stepped forward, casually calling 300 meters child's play. He demanded 500 meters instead, causing both the recruits and veterans to burst out laughing. They laughed, wondering if this insanely arrogant recruit was sleepwalking. Even Barnaby worried, warning him against talking too big. He begged him to just drop it, but Jackson clapped his hands in absolute approval. I love that courage. Let's see if you can back it up. Caspian wordlessly walked to the firing position. He aimed for roughly 5 seconds. Then he pulled the trigger and smoothly tossed the gun back. Everyone stood completely speechless. Heavy silence. Jackson raises his binoculars to check the target. His face freezes. He looks back with an incredibly complex gaze. He asks Caspian a direct question. How did that last shot feel? Caspian just drawls, passable. Jackson's mouth twitches with pure rage. Finally, he announces it. Caspian Vance, 500 meters, 10 rings. Absolute shock. The looks they give Caspian turn incredibly complicated. Some are highly amused, others are curious, a few are intensely jealous. Those 2 incredible shots earn Caspian a brand new title in the company. The recruit company's God-Eye Sniper suddenly gains a massive army of fanboys. His small circle grows. Barnaby is joined by over 12 other guys. This makes Barnaby ecstatic. Thank goodness for that incredible system reward. The system's marksmanship skill is completely overpowered. In the weeks ahead, Caspian becomes the absolute center of attention. Sarcastic comments still fly from teammates. But strangely, the squad leader, company commander, and instructor are targeting him. Every single day, his basic training comes with grueling bonus tasks. If the other recruits run 5 kilometers, Caspian must run 10. When they stand at attention for an hour, he gets extra time. If they do 500 push-ups, he must do 1,000. In classroom lectures, he is called on twice as much as anyone. Honestly, it looks like special treatment, and the others definitely think so. But while they are cozy in bed, he is still limping. When he finally crawls back completely exhausted, they only laugh at him. They whisper that it serves him right for showing off, but then he barely falls asleep before a sudden assembly whistle jolts them awake. Without even opening his eyes, his reflexes kick in to fold blankets. Boarding heavy, exhausted eye bags, Caspian is the first one downstairs. Once everyone is gathered, Commander Jackson smiles brightly with news. He announces a special tradition of holding a party after 1 month. Hearing the word party, everyone's tired eyes instantly light up with joy. They eagerly shout, when does it start, what should they prepare? One recruit offers to play guitar if they have one on hand. Everyone pitches their talents, but then Jackson drops a massive bombshell. Because daily training is fixed, the celebration can only happen at night. The crowd instantly deflates, begging to just opt out of it. But Jackson's expression turns deadly serious as he snaps back. This is a mandatory tradition, demanding if they understand basic English. The crowd instantly shuts up. You can hear a pin drop. Jackson smiles with satisfaction before going over the planned events. It starts exactly at midnight and begins with holding a stance. Then comes sprints, relays, a 1,000-meter run, and endless push-ups. He rattles off over a dozen grueling physical challenges without stopping. There is absolutely nothing fun here. Everyone looks completely horrified. Seriously, who is this nightmare party actually supposed to please? Right on cue, the smiling veterans stroll over with mocking grins. Jackson even has the nerve to smirk and tell them to look. Prepared an audience for you. Perhaps the collective resentment of the crowd was so strong it actually summoned a rain cloud. The veterans came fully prepared, setting up massive umbrellas on the sideline. Meanwhile, had to stand celebrating in the pouring rain. Jackson took a slow sip from his thermos of goji berry tea. Competition was split into individual and group events. The winning team gets a prize they could group up on their own. Originally, everyone thought it was just a simple attention test, but unexpectedly, the veterans pulled out some strings from God knows where, tied a row of tiny bells to them, and staked them at both ends. If anyone moved even an inch, it would trigger the bells under them. Hold for 10 minutes, grouped by rows. If a row's bells ring, 2 minutes are added to their time. The rain soaked their clothes completely. At the 7-minute mark, someone accidentally triggered a bell. Jackson calmly announced, row 1 add 2 minutes. Under these conditions, every single second was sheer torture. Jackson observed Caspian curiously and found that he was like a stone statue, unmoving. Except for the required leg lifts, Caspian stood in the first row. By the time his teammates had endured 10 minutes, many had agonizing expressions. Their legs were trembling violently. At that moment, the first row's bells rang. Again, row 2, add another 2 minutes, making it 6 extra minutes now, just like That a simple standing exercise dragged on for a grueling 20 minutes. When the event was finally over, everyone felt a massive burden lift, limping as they walked. The next event was the 100-meter dash, groups of 4 running simultaneously, taking the average time of the 4. Caspian's group ended up with a guy with terrible physical coordination. He was always dead last. The other group saw him as dead weight. Caspian told him dismissively he would not let him finish last, but his teammate was still incredibly nervous, muttering that he absolutely cannot drag Caspian down. He had to give it his all. The sprint officially began. Julian Pierce's group ran before them. They were all track stars. When the gun went off, they shot forward like lightning. Their average was 12.73 seconds, comparable to national level 3 athletes. Julian and his crew looked at them provocatively. "Hey shorty," they sneered, "do not be the excuse." When Caspian loses, the short guy was Tobias Wren, a freshman from another university in the city. In high school, he only ever studied from dawn to dusk, doing the bare minimum for physical education, so naturally, he was always at the bottom. In the military, he had secretly cried about it a few times in private. Caspian walked over and patted his shoulder, telling him to stay calm because winning or losing does not matter, just stay behind him and keep a steady footing. Tobias nodded. Deeply moved, the whistle blew. Caspian launched toward the finish line like a bullet leaving the chamber. He was basically a shooting star. Before anyone could even make a wish, he was already at the finish line. Julian's buddy stared blankly, wondering why it felt like Caspian was way faster than them. His friend elbowed him. "You are seeing things. Since we did not see ourselves run, we do not have a concept of the time." Tobias was still hanging his head in guilt, being still so much slower than Caspian and dragging the team down. Caspian went over and Caspian told him he did great just now, way faster than his previous times. He let out a long sigh, waiting anxiously for results. Caspian Vance's average group time, 12.39 seconds. When that result dropped, the whole chaotic scene completely descended into madness. Tobias was leagues behind, yet their group was somehow beat Julian's. Was it a mistake? This is rigged. Suddenly, Jackson fired a blank. Bang, dead silence. Barnaby 12:52, round 12:72. Tobias 13:1, Caspian 11:2. Tobias's eyes bulged in excitement, actually breaking into the 13-second range. He usually hovered around 14 seconds. No way did Caspian actually run 11.2. That is literally a literal god carrying the squad. Jackson's lips curled up. Only he noticed that Caspian intentionally slowed down right before crossing the finish line. What in the world was his actual top speed? From then on, Tobias followed Caspian around like a devoted shadow. He made a firm resolution to become his #1 lackey. In the next 400-meter relay, their group broke the record again. Julian's group scored 51.98. The others were all over 52 seconds. Caspian calculated quickly, as long as they beat 50 seconds, they would be fine. Under his guidance, Tobias actually improved quite a bit. He practically coasted, crossing the finish line right at the 50-second mark. The veteran timing the race grunted Caspian's group's time at 50.03 seconds, whispering to him that he had slowed down again on the final sprint. He merely smiled and said absolutely nothing. By 4 a.m. the rain was pouring harder. Thankfully, this absurd celebration party was finally coming to an end. Everyone thought it was over, and they could rush back for 2 hours of sleep, but unexpectedly, Jackson waved his hand, yelling that they had not practiced marching in the rain yet and promised to teach them a lesson today. The crowd erupted in a collective wail of agony. Their soaking wet clothes clung tightly to their bodies. With every step, they could feel the heavy fabric sliding against their skin. At first, everyone maintained a light jog, but slowly the leader's pace decreased, and everyone dragged forward as slowly as snails. The group finally exhaustively reached their destination just before 5:30 a.m., but the destination was empty. There was only a note left for them. Opening it, they were utterly dumbfounded. It stated that because they forgot to bring their rucksacks, this would not count as a loaded march. The standard was 25 kilograms. Talk about a brutal twist. The crowd flipped the paper over, wondering if the ink washed off. Were they supposed to go all the way back to get 25 kilograms of luggage and carry it up? Caspian looked thoughtful and started scanning the area. Activating his eagle eye skill, he carefully surveyed the perimeter and noticed quite a few tools scattered around. He smiled faintly and muttered that he understood what to do. At That moment Rowan asked if Caspian knew what it actually meant. His interpretation was that they had to carry 25 kilograms of dead weight regardless of what it was, including wood, rocks, or bricks. His voice was not exceptionally loud. But many heard it. Someone questioned if Caspian was wrong, wondering if they would just be carrying heavy garbage for nothing. Wasn't it more likely a hint for them to go back and get their actual gear? Barnaby and Tobias ignored the doubts around them and asked Caspian firmly what they should do. They agree to follow Caspian's lead, and soon half the group chooses to trust him. Caspian calmly explains to the group that he already spotted some sandbags and heavy rocks nearby, asking for a few volunteers to go back and retrieve them. 5 recruits immediately volunteer to help, so Caspian points toward 2 nearby trees where 2 axes are embedded right in the trunks. The others feel like something is off with these trees, but cannot quite explain why. Before long, the recruits gather all the materials around Caspian. That is when they notice the sandbags are marked 10 kilograms, and the rocks are suspiciously uniform. Caspian Vance and his crew watch the massive pile grow, realizing Caspian is probably right, though their pride stops them from admitting it. They stubbornly sneer that there must be another way. Caspian ignores them and distributes the weight among the group. With a few rocks left over, he weighs the axes in his hands. They are actually quite heavy, easily making up the remaining 10 pounds together. Right then, the heavy rain finally stops. Meanwhile, the surveillance room, Jackson and Gareth watch the live feed. They note that Caspian has some serious brains, deciphering the secret immediately. In past years, only a handful of recruits ever understood the hidden task. He clearly has massive leadership potential. When the large group of recruits is nearing the bottom of the mountain, they run right into Caspian's crew. Trudging miserably back up, Caspian plans to walk past, but someone behind him speaks up first, asking why their dear brother Caspian is heading back, mockingly questioning if they are actually copying them to find some rocks. The teasing remarks about his brilliant ideas clearly hit a painful nerve. Caspian clenches his fists, glaring viciously at Caspian and telling him to just wait. Caspian simply gives him a dismissive glance, completely unbothered. It is not his fault that others cannot keep up with his intellect. As soon as the group reaches the bottom, they find Leon standing next to a massive scale, ordering everyone to weigh their makeshift heavy packs. The recruits proudly place their makeshift weights on the scale, looking incredibly smug when Leon confirms they all passed and can go eat. It is already 9:30 in the morning, well past breakfast hours. Having gone without sleep for nearly 20 hours, the group is completely exhausted. They rush to the mess hall only to find leftover slop and cold soup. It feels like a bad dream, but suddenly one of them laughs. At least they have something to eat, because Caspian's group will get absolutely nothing. With that harsh comparison, the awful slop suddenly looks incredibly delicious. They dump the leftover soup over their rice, scarfing it down quickly. Like starving beasts, then head straight to the dorm and pass out. Just 2 hours later, Caspian and Barnaby are rudely awakened by a massive racket. It turns out Caspian and his defeated group just finished the punishment march. Seeing the others sleeping soundly in bed makes them incredibly bitter. So they deliberately make a ton of noise. Caspian just shoots them a look. Barnaby gets pissed off, telling them to shut up because they are trying to sleep. Caspian snarls with venomous sarcasm, asking if they haven't slept enough already. Miss the mess hall and starve, he says, playing nice. Then the guy walks right up to Caspian's bed, sneering. Does Caspian enjoy seeing him look so pathetic? Caspian replies with complete indifference, telling him he feels absolutely nothing toward him. Caspian is utterly enraged. Caspian, he does not care. He ignores him completely. Soon, shooting practice begins, finally. The real weapons everyone has been dreaming of, but they are empty, just stance practice. To get a feel for them, but after holding that heavy pose for 10 minutes their arms inevitably droop, instant regret. Whenever that happens, instructors strike them down, brutally smacking their arms with rulers and shouting to tighten up. Do they plan to shoot dirt? With that stance, they are only fit to play whack-a-mole. Everyone is wincing in pain from the brutal smacks. But wait, out of 100 recruits, Caspian is the only one who never gets hit. Jackson stands next to him several times, but Caspian remains immovable, unable to find a single flaw, nothing. He can only trouble the other recruits. Barnaby sidles up to whisper that Caspian is keeping all his secret techniques to himself, without sharing with his friends. Naturally, Jackson overhears their quiet whispering. and smiles wickedly, telling Caspian to share his practical techniques with his peers. Seeing Jackson's smug smile, Caspian can only curse the instructor's ancestors. In his head, what technique do years of frontline combat even count? No chance does his experience built on a mountain of corpses count. Left with no choice, Caspian has to calmly spout some complete nonsense. He claims that as a kid, he liked to pee with arms spread wide, holding 2 water jugs filled to the brim. If his hands ever shook, he would punish himself by holding them even longer. Later in college, he went to the gym to lift weights, since holding a gun is purely about arm strength. Barnaby listens intently, nodding along like this actually makes sense. But when Caspian mentions the gym, Barnaby stops. Something is off. He leans in, whispering about Caspian's endless daily part-time jobs. Jackson shoots Caspian an amused, playful look, waiting for his explanation. Caspian grits his teeth, muttering that he only went during the holidays. Hearing this, Barnaby claps his hands in sudden, goofy realization. He completely buys it, guessing Caspian spent every single holiday working out. Caspian lets out a deep breath. Safe, Barnaby is so easy to fool. He claims he also runs marathons, prompting Tobias to have an epiphany too. Tobias agrees that must be why Caspian can run so incredibly fast. Jackson gives Caspian a look of mock admiration, flashing a quick thumbs up, to the recruits. This looks like the captain officially approving his methods. And now things get serious. The moment live ammo is loaded, the mood shifts. A heavy silence, then Gareth speaks up. He tells them that for their first live fire, hitting the center is not required. Just grazing the board is enough. 10 recruits line up, aiming far away. 50 meters feels like nothing to them. Gareth glances at the recruits who are still talking big, challenging them to see if they can even graze the board. Everyone raises their rifles, slowly bringing their eyes to the heavy scopes. If their arms shake even slightly, the distant target will completely vanish. The crosshairs would drift completely off, and just trying to aim had them sweating. Bullets. Gareth ran through a few techniques, then started the countdown. 3, 2, 1, fire. The gunshots were staggered and some didn't even shoot. Those who did looked completely shell-shocked, with their arms left completely numb from the recoil. Gareth walked up to the silent recruits. He asked why they didn't shoot, and they hesitated, saying they hadn't locked onto the target yet, but in the military, obeying orders is the highest priority. Reload and fire. The best score among these 10 was a measly 7 rings. 3 people completely missed the board. Do they still think 50 meters is easy? The first batch of recruits shook their heads in unison. It was all Caspian's fault for making it look so effortless, making them think shooting was a breeze. When it was his group's turn, an anomaly occurred. Gareth pulled him aside to the furthest edge of the firing line, while everyone else's targets were at 50 meters. His was set at 600. Jaws hit the floor. He knew the contrast would be brutal, but this was an insane handicap. Was this the skill gap they were starting with? Did Caspian unlock 50-meter achievements in the womb? Jealousy among the recruits slowly morphed into pure awe. Cassian's own feelings toward him were becoming incredibly complex. He calmly took the rifle Gareth handed him, adopting the exact same stance. He stood perfectly still. 3, 2, 1, fire. Bang, bang, bang. This time everyone fired at once. His group had 2 strong prospects who managed to hit 10 rings, while only one completely missed. Everyone craned their necks, eagerly awaiting his results. Gareth deliberately. Caspian Vance 600-meter shot, 10 rings. Instantly the crowd erupted in loud cheers for their undisputed sniper god. Then Gareth asked what other marksmanship techniques Caspian had to share with the group. He took a deep breath, promising that he would share them, but the moment he turned around, his expression darkened. The captain and instructor were clearly trying to make his life difficult. He just wanted to quietly serve his time in the military. 3 months flew by, and in a flash it was time for assignment separation. During their time together, Cassian had gradually let go of his hostility and wariness toward him. For assignments, everyone received a preference form. He ended up filling a choice nobody expected: the reconnaissance company. Inside Jackson Briggs's office, Captain Thaddeus Stone of the Sharpshooter Company and Captain Lysander Cole of the Recon Company argued fiercely, with Thaddeus insisting that Caspian was a generational talent with flawless fundamentals who belonged in the sharpshooters. But Lysander countered, asking if he had ever heard of forced choices. Caspian chose Recon, making the whining useless, just like when old G poached A great sniper years ago, leaving Thaddeus with a massive grudge, he knew. Damn well he poached him back then, when he was just like Caspian, dead set. On recon, wondering what kind of brainwashing potion he had fed him. Jackson's ears were ringing from all the shouting, prompting him to intervene. They were arguing like children, yet Caspian might not even appreciate them. That night, Caspian was called into Jackson's office, where he saw a man sitting on the sofa wearing the insignia of a senior officer. Caspian immediately saluted. Respectfully wishing him a good evening, the man nodded. Jackson smiled, noting Caspian's preference for him, seeing he wanted recon. Caspian nodded. Jackson continued, praising his unbeatable marksmanship. Honestly, if he wanted specialized training, the Sharpshooter Company would be a highly suitable choice for him. Captain Lysander Cole, who had been silent, shot Jackson an icy glare. Caspian looked at both of them, calmly stating he wanted to become a well-rounded soldier. Recon tests a soldier's complete skill set. Jackson nodded. He introduced the captain of the Recon Company, Lysander Cole, who wanted a word. Caspian saluted Lysander respectfully. The more Lysander looked at Caspian, the more satisfied he became. Chuckling warmly, he welcomed Caspian to Recon but added a question. He heard that during all the tests, Caspian only ever beat second place by a tiny margin. He was not displaying his true limits. Caspian replied smoothly. It was entirely based on luck. Lysander laughed. You're the classic type who rises to the level of competition. If anyone tried to poach him, would he consider it? Caspian instantly thought of the Sharpshooter Company back in college. He was an invisible nobody who could not get any attention, and now he was highly sought after. The Recon Company was his sole objective, since becoming a special forces operative required complete versatility. Jackson chimed in dryly, asking if he knew that to be a special forces operative, elite marksmanship was absolutely critical. Caspian smiled faintly, saying shooting was not a challenge. Hearing that arrogant claim, Jackson desperately wanted to jump up and smack him. Look at how cocky he was, just because he got first in long distance running and overall fitness. Lysander of the Recon Company did not expect Caspian's stance to be so unshakable. In his excitement, Lysander could not help but trash-talk Captain Stone, making it sound like a full report to Caspian. Jackson had to aggressively fake cough twice to make him stop. After Caspian left, Lysander frowned at Jackson and slammed his hand hard on the desk. They had known each other for years, yet Jackson played both sides. Jackson sighed and admitted shamelessly that old Stone gave him 2 tins of tea, so he had to help him pitch it. Lysander gritted his teeth. 2 tins of tea to sell out. Lysander demanded where his dignity was and where the justice he supposedly upheld went. Jackson's eyes darted around guiltily. They were all in the same military district anyway, basically one big family. Did it really matter whose company he joined? His voice got smaller and smaller until he completely lost his nerve. Lysander pointed a shaking finger at him. He was so furious he could not speak. Finally, he grabbed a freshly brewed cup of tea on Jackson's desk and ruthlessly poured it all over Jackson's prized clavia plant before storming out, leaving Jackson staring mournfully at his ruined plant. Jackson cried over his beautiful, unlucky flower. He muttered that Caspian better stay firm on his choice after this sacrifice. The next day, Caspian was once again summoned to the familiar office of Jackson Briggs. Only this time, an unfamiliar person sat waiting. Captain Thaddeus Stone of the Sharpshooter Company stood there. He cut straight to the chase, telling Caspian Vance that with his incredible marksmanship, he belongs in the Sharpshooter Company for advanced training. He knew Caspian wanted the Special Forces and pointed out any company could serve as that stepping stone. But Caspian firmly maintained his stance. He thanked the captain for the appreciation, but made it clear he still strongly preferred the Recon Company. If they forced him into the Sharpshooter Company, he promised he would not actively rebel against orders. With a final thank you, Caspian took his leave. Thaddeus looked at Jackson, totally confused about what Caspian meant. Was he actually joining them? Jackson replied helplessly that Caspian was just trying to save his face, politely but firmly turning him down. Thaddeus glared furiously at Jackson, grabbing his 2 tins of premium tea from the desk on his way out. Mission failed. Wasting good tea on him was a crime. Jackson chased after him, begging him to leave at least 1 tin since he tried to help. They looked like total clowns, ugly on both sides. A few days later, the company assignments were finalized. Barnaby and Tobias went to The artillery company. Surprisingly, Caspian's doormate got sent to the sharpshooter company while Rowan Brooks and Caspian were assigned to the recon company. Upon hearing the news, Rowan literally jumped for joy, thrilled to have Caspian around. Because he felt totally safe, even though they only knew each other for 3 months. Tobias was extremely reluctant to part ways. His progress had only been possible because of Caspian's protection and encouragement. Now that they were separated, he had no idea what would happen, but Caspian comforted him, promising they would have plenty of chances to meet. Assignments depended on individual strengths. He hoped they would all become top elites of their new squads in their respective companies. Telling them help was always just a call away. Everyone firmly repeated the vow, promising to be just a call away. That night, they all packed their bags for their new companies to report for duty. On the way to recon, Rowan was incredibly hyped. He heard they were in the second squad and would share a dorm with the veterans. He wondered if they would try to haze them. He babbled the entire way, giving Caspian a massive headache. He warned him to just do what needed doing and ignore everything else. Rowan nodded, furiously, saying he felt totally safe and was not scared of anything. Arriving at the dorm, the others seemed to be out training. 2 empty bunk beds stood waiting. Rowan claimed a lower bunk and Caspian tossed his gear onto the top bunk. Just as they finished making their beds, the veterans returned from training. The rookies immediately introduced themselves. Caspian introduced himself, followed by Rowan. Hearing Caspian's name, the veterans instantly locked their eyes on him. A few scoffed, asking if this was Caspian Vance, whose shooting was supposedly legendary, and why he was slumming it in recon. They wanted to know if he was that rookie. Rowan sensed the sudden tension and looked at Caspian nervously. Caspian just replied with absolute calm, thanking them all for their high praise. Rowan was completely speechless at his attitude. How could anyone see that as praise? They were targeting him. That response completely derailed the veterans' train of thought. Their aggressive verbal punch landed squarely on soft cotton. They snapped. They weren't praising him, just curious to see how he performed. Caspian smiled politely, thanking them for caring about him and promising his best. The veterans looked up in sheer exasperation. Did this kid not understand human speech? Of course, Caspian understood perfectly, but playing dumb saved him a lot of unnecessary trouble. But these guys were dead set on picking a fight. One veteran, named Corporal Wyatt Kane, pointed at Rowan's freshly made bed, demanding who gave him permission to sleep there. Rowan awkwardly asked if they weren't allowed since they only saw empty beds when they took them. Wyatt snapped sharply. Those were the beds they used for breaks, ordering them to move their stuff. Now Rowan, intimidated by the scolding, turned pale and was about to obediently pack his bags, but Caspian interjected, asking if the other empty bed was off limits too. Wyatt raised an eyebrow, claiming they lounged on both. The 2 rookies had to take the top bunks. There were 2 empty bunk beds. There was absolutely no regulation stating recruits could only take the top bunks. The other veterans burst into laughter, bending over with amusement. They mocked that military rules demanded absolute obedience to veterans, asking if they didn't know that. Caspian shook his head, pointing out they held the same rank, so listening was respect, but respect goes both ways. Stop acting like entitled boomers. The veterans' eyebrows twitched violently. One of them gave a meaningful look to his buddies. They immediately moved to shut the door and windows. Rowan instantly realized what was happening and shrank behind Caspian in terror. Caspian reminded them fighting was strictly prohibited. The veterans sneered, asking who was fighting. They were just showing care to their new teammates. Caspian asked back if they were absolutely sure this wasn't considered fighting. The veterans cracked their knuckles menacingly, saying nobody here saw a fight. Caspian let out a sigh of relief, saying he felt much better if that was the case. The veterans blanked for a second, completely lost. They are about to find out. The next second, he grabbed Wyatt Kane by the collar, flipped him a full 180 degrees in the air, and slammed him heavily onto the floor. The smug smiles on the veterans' faces completely froze. The victim, Wyatt, didn't even process what had just happened. Rowan stood there with his mouth agape in absolute shock. Caspian's speed was terrifyingly fast, yet considerately enough to prevent the guy from cracking his skull. Caspian had maintained his grip on Wyatt's collar, ensuring his butt took the impact first. He smiled warmly. No fighting, just veterans showing some care, right? That smile sent shivers down their spines. The others snapped out of it, rolling up their sleeves to rush him. He effortlessly caught a flying punch, twisted the guy's arm behind his back, and listened to him hiss in pain. Using Tai-Kai principles to turn their momentum against them, he casually neutralized the remaining attackers. Then he pointed to Rowan's bed, asking if they could finally sleep there. Wyatt was incredibly furious, but he forced out a weak hum. Right at that moment, the squad leader walked in, seeing a bunch of veterans looking furious and glaring at him like a mortal enemy. He barked, demanding what was going on and why they weren't being friendly to the veterans grumbled, their faces dark with heavily bruised egos. Their squad leader, Sergeant Winston Hayes, stepped in with an enthusiastic smile. He introduced the dorm mates, offering some final instructions before heading out. "If anyone gives you guys trouble," Winston promised, "you come straight to me." Rowan sighed, feeling like they had barely survived a literal war zone. He wished the sergeant had mentioned that before they witnessed a complete massacre. Caspian offered a polite nod, promising to cherish their loving new family. Wyatt's jaw twitched. Sergeant Winston really was a genuinely helpful guy. He carefully laid out all the military guidelines before the main assembly. Soon, the entire recon company gathered out on the dusty training grounds. Over 100 soldiers from 9 different squads stood waiting in neat rows. Captain Lysander Cole immediately spotted Caspian standing tall in the crowd. A slight smile crossed his face as he welcomed the brand new recruits. A sudden, rhythmic wave of applause broke out across the entire field. The captain reminded everyone that recon was about much more than scouting. From hacking and sniping to tactical breaching, they had to master everything. In 5 months, they would face the massive annual military simulation. He warned them not to bring shame to their unit out there. Lysander cast a very brief, knowing glance toward Caspian before dismissing them. But after that morning's scuffle, the atmosphere in the barracks turned icy. The veterans clearly held a grudge against both Caspian and Rowan. While veterans ran a full 100 meters, rookies usually got a break. But Wyatt Kane had other plans, marching right up to challenge Caspian directly. He demanded to know if Caspian's legendary stamina was real, proposing a race. Caspian simply smiled, asking what kind of stakes they were playing for. Wyatt's entire focus was on getting revenge for his morning humiliation. The loser would clean the barracks for a week and pour washwater. Rowan frowned, instantly pulling his friend aside in a sheer panic. He whispered that his endurance was terrible and he would ruin everything. Caspian calmly told him to adjust his stance and match his pace. Rowan was terrified, pointing out that 50 kilograms was way too heavy. Caspian countered that if they backed down now, the bullying would never stop. They had to prove their absolute strength to shut everyone up permanently. Rowan nodded, choosing to trust him, and called the sergeant over. Acting as referee, the leader watched them hoist the massive heavy log. Beside Caspian and Rowan stood their main opponents, Wyatt and Zachary Dunn. The rough piece of timber was nearly 1.5 meters long and 50 kilograms. Caspian took his position slightly off-center, with Rowan right behind him. The watching veterans snickered, whispering that Caspian was a total idiot. They believed his poor positioning would make him bear almost all the weight. Even the squad leader noticed this rookie error and almost warned him. But since this was their own wager, he decided to stay quiet. "Go," he shouted, and both duos immediately launched forward like rockets. Wyatt and Zachary moved with perfect synchronicity, matching step for step. But Caspian and Rowan looked entirely out of sync from the start. Flailing behind Caspian as he struggles to keep up, the gap between the two teams widened, but gradually they find their rhythm and step in perfect sync. Caspian starts accelerating with Rowan sticking close. Incredibly, they manage to overtake Wyatt and Zachary. "How can these two rookies run this fast without any team training?" The log is practically bouncing on their shoulders. Their skin is definitely going to be scraped raw when they cross the finish line. The veterans glare in pure rage, still 6 meters behind. Caspian immediately drops the heavy log. Dark red blood seeps right through his green camo uniform. They finished first. Wyatt and Zachary finally arrive panting, their faces flushed red, and then, turning sickly pale, someone in the crowd yells out, "Losing to 2 rookie recruits is just embarrassing." They completely threw away their veteran pride. Whispers of doubt spread, but their own dormmates remain completely silent. Everyone assumes Caspian hid his strength to humiliate Wyatt. Rowan runs over, excitedly calling his buddy a total beast. Nobody can bully them now, but when Rowan spots the bloody mess on Caspian's shoulder, he panics and urges him, To get to the infirmary immediately, Caspian refuses. No rush yet. He wants his prize. Rowan hesitates, saying they are just recruits and those guys are veterans. Caspian's cold gaze bypasses him, landing squarely on Wyatt standing behind. Rules are rules. Wyatt and Zachary still drown in their humiliating defeat. Caspian walks right up to Wyatt and asks about the bet. Wyatt's face turns completely ashen. He squeezes a response through his teeth, barely. Louder than a whisper, a bet is a bet, he says, accepting defeat. Caspian smiles. For the next week, Wyatt will be doing all their cleaning and washing. Wyatt is totally stunned. Is this real? Aren't they supposed to exchange polite words and cancel the bet to save face? Why is Caspian ignoring the script? The rest of the dorm heard the exchange and looks completely bewildered, a veteran pouring foot water for a rookie recruit. That is unprecedented in military history. Training continues. The angry veterans glare daggers all day, but Caspian completely ignores them, eating his meals with a massive appetite. By the time they return, drenched in sweat, it is 9:30 p.m. Pushing the door open, everyone is waiting. On their stools, staring menacingly, Caspian just grabs his wash basin and heads straight for the showers. Rowan nervously mutters, asking if they are plotting something evil. Caspian calmly tells him to cross that bridge when they get there. No need to stress yet. Now the shower room has 10 stalls, separated by simple dividers. Just as they lather up, a gang of veterans swarms in. One guy walks straight up to Rowan, demanding to rinse off first. Rowan had only just put shampoo in his hair. He did not expect this kind of petty bullying, but the guy already slams his basin onto Rowan's shelf. And of course, another guy tries the exact same move, slamming his basin onto Caspian's shelf. Rowan, intimidated by the veteran towering half a head over him, meekly steps aside. Caspian frowns slightly, but continues to wash without any hurry. The veteran barks at him to move. Caspian slowly rinses off, taking his time. Onlookers watch the scene with mocking smirks. The veteran, trying to take Caspian's stall, feels his ego taking a massive hit, snapping that the recruit needs to learn his place. Caspian looks up at the civilized behavior guidelines on the wall. It says no fighting and conserve water, nothing about bowing to veterans. The veteran soldiers instantly glare back at him in pure anger. The entire crowd surrounds him. Suddenly, they freeze in absolute shock. They stare at his chest. How does a recruit have gunshot scars? They spot a massive, jagged scar running across Caspian's chest. It is clearly a bullet wound. Caspian just calmly finishes rinsing. He tries to leave, but 10 guys completely block him in. Do they really want to chat while completely naked? The veterans glare darkly as Caspian grabs his basin to leave. But one veteran grabs his wrist, asking if he is deaf. Caspian calmly points right back to the rules on the wall. The group of veterans just burst out into loud, mocking laughter. They joke that the shower floor is just really slippery. A few bumps and bruises in the shower are completely normal. A cold, sharp smile slowly creeps onto Caspian's face. Rowan hears him repeat that and immediately starts to sweat. Oh crap, this entire situation feels way too familiar. Suddenly, Caspian smashes his plastic basin over the leader's head. The veteran, who was just laughing, is caught completely off guard. Caspian moves like lightning, sweeping the man's leg away. The loudmouth veteran crashes onto the wet floor with a thud. Next, the rest of the gang goes down like bowling pins. They slip and slide, piling up on the wet floor. As they groan in pain, Caspian casually steps over them. He reminds them that the floor is just incredibly slippery. Bruises are to be expected, he mocks, walking out with Rowan. Behind them, the defeated veterans seethe with pure rage. Helping each other up, someone asks if they should report this. Report what? That 10 experienced veterans got absolutely wrecked by a single new recruit. If word of this gets out, they will never show their faces again. One veteran clutches his bruised thigh, growling in anger. They will find plenty of other ways to ruin his life here. On their walk back, Rowan asks about the bullet wound. Caspian brushes it off with a vague answer, so Rowan drops it. Back inside the dorm, the other recruits are still glaring intensely at them. Caspian completely ignores them and heads straight to his bed. Wyatt watches his every move nervously until Caspian finally climbs into his bunk. Only then does Wyatt breathe a heavy sigh of relief, like a disaster survivor. Rowan climbs into his bed, his mind racing with crazy thoughts. He lets out a heavy, dramatic sigh that instantly triggers Zachary. Zachary scowls and marches straight over to Rowan's bed. He demands to know why Rowan is acting so mysterious and keeping secrets. Rowan is completely stunned by the sudden, aggressive confrontation. He was just lying there with his eyes closed, doing nothing. Zachary ground his teeth, muttering that he was going to sleep. Training was brutal, dawn to dusk was fully packed. The veterans drew a clear line in the sand and ignored the rookies. They treated them like ghosts, only speaking when chores needed doing. Wyatt and Zachary took over dorm cleaning, leaving the past behind. The tense-foot washing ordeal was thankfully never brought up again. Still, veteran pride was stinging, but the rookie made zero mistakes. With no excuse to target him, they turned their frustration elsewhere. They targeted a sharpshooter named Caspian Vance instead. His name was highly similar to the rookie's, and his skills were average. Poor Caspian suffered some seriously unfair bullying just for his name. Everything shifted as the massive annual military simulation exercise drew near. Tension was high, absolutely everyone had to participate. The recon company split up into specific scouting and infiltration squads. Each 5-member squad was drawn completely at random from platoons. With about 6 people per group, they formed 6 squads. Every pair of squads would face off directly as enemies. 1 member from each squad had to be sent as a hostage. The remaining soldiers were deployed for either ambush or defense. First team to rescue their hostage wins, simple as that. Every veteran desperately prayed not to get paired with a rookie. But fate was cruel, teaming Wyatt and Zachary with our main character. They nearly fainted. Wyatt looked completely miserable during the planning. The rookie offered to handle infiltration, but Wyatt shut him down. He snapped at him to follow orders and stop calling shots. So the rookie was relegated to basic ambush duty instead. The training took place deep in the mountains, bases far apart. While syncing up their radios, they heard a massive argument nearby. A veteran was screaming furiously, calling a rookie completely useless. He barked that the useless recruit would only drag them down here. The terrified recruit stayed silent. It was none other than Caspian. Amusingly, Caspian was physically much stronger than the screaming veteran. But Caspian simply chose to ignore the harsh insults and move on. Over on their side, Wyatt finalized the scouting roles. Zachary would provide support, while the rookie got left behind. His job was purely to guard the outer perimeter. Another grumpy veteran from a different squad watched the enemy hostage. Guarding was a thankless task, and he looked incredibly annoyed. If the hostage escaped, he would take all the blame. He stood clutching his rifle, looking completely miserable. Heading to camp, Wyatt kept lecturing, and honestly, his attitude is exhausting. He threw a sharp, warning glare back at the rookie, warning him not to let a few lucky moments go to his head. This drill was about teamwork, but the rookie stayed completely silent. Once things kicked off, he immediately scaled a leafy tree to hide. One leg dangles as he camouflages the other with branches. The guard looks up. Dumbfounded, he mutters, "Is he a reincarnated monkey to climb up that fast?" Normally, an ambusher sets up further out to intercept enemies early. But Caspian literally just parked himself right above their base. The guard wants to warn him, but then thinks that if the hostage is rescued, he can just blame him since he is right there. With everyone scheming, the operation finally begins. Sitting up in the tree, Caspian uses his eagle eye skill to clearly monitor the enemy movements. They sent 2 guys heading straight for their camp. Their sniper was highly skilled, securing a vantage point early. On just as Wyatt is about to run into the enemy recon scout, their sniper fires a clean shot, hitting Wyatt. Seeing the white smoke puffing from his shoulder sensor, Wyatt realizes he is out. He furiously slams his helmet into the dirt and screams into his radio, "What is wrong with you guys?" Caspian, as the ambusher, I was in your range. Why did you not cover me? And Zachary, your job was to cover me while I rescued the hostage. Now look, I am dead. Zachary lies flat in the brush, pale and careful. Scanning his surroundings, the enemy is too fast, he stammers, literally unable to see him. Caspian, cover me, I am going in. Caspian really does not want to engage, but Zachary relentlessly demands a response. Caspian sighs and presses his mic. Suddenly, Zachary hears a faint rustling of grass. He peeks up and sees a pair of combat boots slowly approaching. Just as he prepares to fire, a rock suddenly smacks against his helmet. Poof, white smoke erupts. Zachary punches the ground in pure rage, swearing about how fast they moved. Caspian, I told you to cover me. A grown man walked right up to me and you. Did not see him, Cassian replies lazily. You were almost 500 meters away from me. Do you think my rifle shoots homing missiles? Zachary knows he has a point. But his ego will not let him back down. Aren't you supposed to be a sniper god? You did this on purpose, Cassian sighs in exasperation. Didn't you assign me to? Perimeter defense ambush. Now you want offensive, cover 500 meters. Way, what exactly is my job description here? Why it feels Cassian is intentionally sabotaging them, even if you have a grudge against us, do not ruin the exercise. You are dragging everyone down, even the veteran guard down below is getting sick of listening to them, though he finds Cassian arrogant the way Wyatt and Zachary are shifting blame is just pathetic. Cassian simply shuts off his radio, muting the buzzing flies. Then he casually hops down from the tree, rifle in hand, and starts walking forward. The guard calls out to him a few times, but seeing no reaction, he throws his hands up. Defeat, fine, screw it, let it burn. Cassian walks about 100 meters, ears twitching. Slightly, he crouches behind a tree root, hiding his rifle barrel in a bush. Bang. The enemy scout freezes in his tracks, looking around in utter panic. Was the shooter? How am I dead? I did not sense a thing. The enemy support player trailing 100 meters behind his scout is also spooked. They are veterans with solid teamwork. The support quickly switches to scout mode, commanding their sniper to adjust coverage, just as their sniper shifts positions on the ridge. Bang, center mass shot. The enemy sniper is. He was completely dumbfounded. Didn't they already eliminate 2 of their guys? Did they send their whole team? How did someone infiltrate like a ghost? The sniper racked his brain, trying to understand how this happened. He couldn't figure out how a squad with 2 dead weights pulled this off. Hearing nearby gunshots, their guard nervously peeked out of the tent, only to lock eyes with a bewildered enemy sniper, covered in white smoke. The guard frowned. How are you dead? He just shrugged helplessly. The guard felt the pressure mount. Meanwhile, Wyatt and Zachary went silent. Hearing 2 shots resulting in 2 quick eliminations left them speechless on comms. One grumbled that the kid did it on purpose, just wanting them to die, so he could play the hero, but they secretly admired his skills. The remaining enemy support player quickly changed his tactics. He fired 2 blind shots into the woods, trying to bait him. The next second, his arm violently jerked. White smoke exploded, blinding his vision. He was eliminated. Just watch him stroll past the guy heading right for their base. As he brushed past his shoulder, only one thought echoed. He didn't even view him as a threat. After all, he is a top 7 international mercenary. He has taken bullets and dragged a crippled leg out of a warlord's compound while carrying a hostage. This game is literally kindergarten to him. If he wasn't afraid of winning too spectacularly, he would have done more. He could have sniped all 4 of them from his spawn. Being too overpowered is honestly such a hassle. Moving like a phantom, he glided into the enemy camp. Bang, 1 shot took out their final defender until he was eliminated. The guy had absolutely no idea how he got hit. He walked into the tent, untied their hostage, and casually looked up at the drone. Casually, he asked if the mission was complete. A few seconds later, the drone broadcasted the red team's victory. Wyatt and Zachary, who fed first blood 5 minutes in, were hallucinating. Did we just get hard carried? Everyone else was crowded around the monitors, watching the drone's live feed. The recruits were cheering wildly. He can play scout, sniper, and breacher. He is an absolute war god. The veterans, however, had a pretty bitter taste in their mouths. They stubbornly argued he had 0 team spirit, acting like a solo show-off who ignored everyone. He just wanted to show off. Suddenly, Caspian Vance spoke up. He asked with a deadpan expression if they even cared about his feelings. They completely sucked and died instantly, only to blame him over the comms. The veterans looked incredibly awkward. They argued that even in a role he disliked, duty is duty. Cassian snorted coldly, pointing out there was no designated captain. In a small skirmish, everyone should discuss tactics, but they failed. Blamed him, and now they're mad he solo carried. When he returned, everyone was tense, looking at him like they wanted to say something. They just couldn't. Wyatt and Zachary looked especially awkward. Finally, Wyatt mustered up his courage and awkwardly muttered, "Sorry, my tone earlier wasn't great." Caspian paused, immediately realizing Wyatt was looking for a graceful way to step down. He nodded. "Next time, let us coordinate better and play to everyone's Strengths: Wyatt had fully prepared himself for Caspian's mockery. He didn't expect him to be so chill about it. He hurriedly asked, "How did you aim at their sniper?" "Earlier, you two were insanely far apart," Caspian explained. "I predicted his movement path and calculated the timing." Zachary chimed in excitedly, "That is way too crazy. Aside from our squad, the best any other squad did was 2 kills, a 1 versus 4. Sweep is legendary status in the entire recon company through this event." Wyatt and Zachary finally found a breakthrough to connect with Caspian. There. Talk about a complete turnaround. Their old prejudice became total, envious admiration. From then on, during free time, Caspian was constantly trailed by his dormmate fan club. People from other squads grumbled in their dorms, "We are already exhausted." Every day, why are Caspian and his squad trying so hard? A guy poked his head down from an upper bunk. "I heard the Special Forces selection is in 3 months. Right after the big exercise." "Yeah, I also heard our company gets 5 nomination slots this year. Usually, a company is lucky to even get 1 or 2. Everyone wants a piece of the pie now." Their squad leader walked in. "Stop gossiping and playing on your phones. Go to sleep. You have everything in your dreams." Meanwhile, under Caspian's guidance, quite a few veterans joined his training cult. At first, they felt it was embarrassing to learn from a recruit. But soon their stubborn pride melted into absolute devotion. He cried out, "I cannot believe my running posture was wrong for 10 years, hurting my knees." An onlooker stared in shock. "You are top 3 in running and your posture was wrong? Are you messing with us?" The veteran bragged. "With my new corrected form, I am at least a full second faster every 100 meters. Originally, the instructor led physical training, but when he saw dozens of people following Caspian's lead, where he assessed their weaknesses, designed personalized training regimens, and then essentially acted as a hands-off supervisor, he happily let him take over." That night, Captains Thaddeus Stone and Lysander Cole returned from a business trip. They wanted to check on their troops at the base first, but when they looked at the main training ground, it was completely empty. Thaddeus blinked in confusion. "Old Cole, is it not mandatory evening training time?" Lysander frowned deeply and immediately pulled out his phone to call platoon leader Wang Lu. "Is it not mandatory training time? Why is the training ground completely empty?" Platoon leader Wade stammered evasively. "Captain, they said today's shooting practice should be at the back mountain shooting range." Lysander Cole's eyebrow twitched violently. "Did you just say should be? You don't even know what your own soldiers are doing. What kind of platoon leader are you?" "Report, Captain, my mistake. I will take you to the rain." Right now, beside them, Captain Thaddeus Stone looked like he had just caught them red-handed. His face was full of smiles, but his voice carried a distinct tone of a guy watching a train wreck for fun. "Oh my, look at the troops these days, managing their own training all by themselves. And you're..." Thaddeus could not believe it. Recon troops practicing shooting in the pitch black. Pull any random soldier from his elite sharpshooter company now. Their shooting at 200 meters was a perfect 10-ring standard every time. Last time he checked, Recon was struggling, stuck at 100 meters. They could not have improved that fast. Just then, Wade rushed over in panic. He ran straight into Lysander Cole's thunderous and angry scowl. Cole demanded a 10,000-word self-reflection essay on his desk by tomorrow. Wade, whose academic skills barely survived middle school, panicked. He made a face uglier than if he were actually crying right there. In the distance, the back mountain shooting range was completely pitch black. They immediately called squad leader Winston Hayes to ask what was going on. Why were all the lights turned off if they were at the rain? Winston calmly replied they were practicing night shooting. Thaddeus laughed in amusement. This was absolutely ridiculous. He scoffed that he had never heard of night shooting without lights. The sheer absurdity of it left Lysander speechless. But after only a few steps, a synchronized volley of gunshots suddenly rang out. A second later, a loud voice barked out the official scores. Both groups' 200-meter night shooting scored all 10 rings. Hearing this, the 3 approaching officers froze dead in their tracks. Can you blame them? Night shooting with no lights and hitting all 10 rings. Thaddeus sprinted over and saw the instructor holding binoculars, calling out the scores. Seeing the captain approach, the instructor immediately handed them over. Refusing to believe the report, Thaddeus peered through the lenses at the targets. Across the 5 distant targets, every single bullet hole was dead center. Thaddeus muttered in disbelief, refusing to believe they shot this. He told Captain Stone they had only just begun. He even coolly claimed their accuracy was still a bit lacking. Thaddeus barked back 5 perfect 10s, and he calls that lacking. Meanwhile, Lysander Cole could no longer hide the massive grin on his face. His dark mood vanished instantly. Thaddeus, on the other hand, silently stewed. He demanded they swap in a new batch and shoot again right now. He wanted to see this impossible shooting standard with his own eyes. Lysander, riding high on pride, told his men to show off. This was their golden opportunity to steal some master techniques from the expert. With the captain's approval, the instructor quickly lined up the next group. Fresh targets were set up, and the instructor ordered them to get ready. The soldiers uniformly adjusted their firing stances in one flawless, fluid motion. Not even Lysander could find a single mistake before the instructor ordered them to fire. They fired 5 targets, 5 perfect hits. Lysander stared at the instructor with an increasingly complex look. Beside him, Old Stone looked like a dark storm cloud. This recon squad was right on the verge of totally surpassing his elites. The captain felt like he was sitting on needles. He suddenly claimed he had urgent business to attend to and hurried away. He muttered, scurrying away hastily. Lysander glanced at the soldiers standing at attention. Every single soldier had a water canteen hanging from their arms, with another canteen suspended from the very barrels of their rifles. He looked at Caspian, who nodded and explained it ensures arm strength and aiming. Stability. Lysander suddenly laughed, declaring that starting right now, Caspian Vance would be appointed as the assistant instructor, working directly with Wade to draft their upcoming training schedules. Meanwhile, after Thaddeus Stone returned to his sharpshooter company, he found only a few scattered squads lazily training. From downstairs, he spotted the recruits chasing each other and messing around near the windows. Boiling with rage, he marched over and slammed the emergency assembly alarm, roaring that the military was no retirement home and they were not on vacation, completely lacking any organization or discipline. He demanded to see their scores, their training, and their marksmanship levels. The triple threat interrogation left everyone looking completely bewildered. The voice of Thaddeus grew louder with every word, warning that anyone not hitting a 10 ring at 200 meters runs 10 kilometers, no, 20 kilometers on a loaded march. Everyone's eyes widened in sheer terror, their inner voices screaming in agony. What kind of crazy pill did the captain swallow today, they wondered. The recruits nervously grabbed their rifles, standing aside with extreme anxiety. Seeing them, Thaddeus recalled the recon soldiers. Water canteens hanging from their arms and rifle barrels while they were waiting. His rage flared up again, demanding to know why they were just standing there waiting, and why they were not actively practicing their basic fundamentals while waiting. Nobody even dared to breathe heavily, terrified that the captain would snap next, breathing so loud he barked, asking if they were the reincarnation of an alarm clock. The veterans easily hit the 200-meter 10-ring standard, but the recruits either hit 9 rings or hesitated for ages, too scared to pull the trigger, regardless of the reason. Nobody escaped a brutal scolding. In the end, they miserably strapped on their heavy rucksacks and ran 20 kilometers around the back mountain. For the next week or so, the usually incredibly busy Captain Stone actually began personally leading the troops' training. One day at noon, Caspian and his teammate had just walked out of the mess hall when they bumped into Julian Pierce, looking dusty and disheveled, resembling a literal famine refugee. Seeing them, it was as if he had found his savior. He rushed over, hugged Caspian, and bawled his eyes out, crying that he had no idea what kind of hell Julian was living in. Caspian awkwardly replied that the training for the sharpshooter company was heavy, sure, but it should not squeeze them completely dry. Hearing this, Julian cried even harder, scoffing at those words. He called it the final bundle of barbed wire that broke the camel's back. Julian sighed tragically, saying he did not know what kind of trauma their captain suffered recently, but he was making them do insane arm strength training. At midnight, he dragged them out to practice shooting in the pitch black, where they saw nothing. Making them shoot in the dark was absolutely mental, and his comrade carefully shot Caspian a side-eye. Caspian awkwardly met his gaze as Julian kept complaining. His abs had gone from a 6-pack to an 8-pack, and he asked if they remembered how he used to have insomnia, but now he could not get enough sleep, claiming his life was a talk about tragedy. The more Cassian listened, the more he wanted to laugh until he finally could not hold it in and burst out laughing. Julian roared furiously. calling Cassian a punk and asking what that meant, accusing him of mocking his suffering. Julian wanted to know if he had any conscience at all. Cassian quickly threw his hands up in surrender, claiming he had absolutely no intention of mocking him. He was just full of pity, never imagining their captain had suffered such a massive trauma. With that, he burst into hysterical laughter once again, while Julian finally realized something was off and asked if they knew something about it. So Cassian narrated exactly what had happened that fateful night, detail by detail. After listening, Julian glared at him with absolute murderous intent, shouting that he could not believe they were the ones who backstabbed them, venting his fury. Angrier as he left, he still looked back at them with tragic reluctance. With a massive loudmouth like Julian around, the news that he was leading the recon training spread like wildfire. Some even wanted to form tour groups just to gawk at their recon company. Honestly, this gossip was taking over the entire base. Today, he brought his brand new schedule straight to Lysander Cole. Lysander took one glance and tossed the plan right back at him, telling him to redo it. He paused, explaining this was designed specifically for the upcoming simulation exercise. Lysander looked at him with a complicated gaze. Keep talking, so he placed the training plan back in front of him, pointing at the different training modules while explaining how they tied directly into the exercise. At first, Lysander was indifferent. After all, he did not see what was so groundbreaking about his plan, but as he kept explaining, his expression turned deadly serious. By the end, he was nodding furiously, beaming from ear to ear, practically ready to give him a standing ovation. Praising the excellent pitch, admitting he had not thought of this angle, he summarized the physical metrics of all the members, dividing them into different tiers based on their individual physical conditions. For example, take Cassian. His sniping level is tier 1, so we can focus him on increasing precision. Meanwhile, his routine will heavily emphasize arm endurance training. Lysander patted his shoulder firmly, declaring they would train exactly according to his plan, and he would be taking on a lot of hard work in the coming days. He immediately snapped to attention and saluted Lysander, saying it was no hardship. He had barely left the office when Lysander received a call from another company commander, Old Cole, asking how things were. Lysander chuckled, telling Old Sterling to just spit out whatever he wanted to say. On the other end, Captain Sterling laughed twice, entirely unabashed, mentioning he heard their company recently produced an incredibly fierce prodigy. Lysander's eyes crinkled into crescent moons with his smile. Oh my, wondering if the news had already reached his ears. Captain Sterling chuckled, accusing him of playing dumb, saying he just wanted to bring some of his boys over to see the current scale of their training, purely for educational purposes. Well, Lysander noted, he should have at least given him a heads up before over so he could make arrangements, but to his utter shock, the guy simply crashed the party that very afternoon, making Lysander ask why he had come over without giving any warning. Although Lysander had full confidence in his troops, having another squad visit meant Lysander needed to showcase his absolute best. He would normally have picked his highest performing soldiers to perform, but Captain Sterling had anticipated this, giving Lysander zero warning. There was zero chance to prepare a facade. Lysander thought Sterling was coming alone, but on reaching the ground floor, he discovered Sterling had brought over a dozen men with him, who immediately saluted Lysander. They saluted Captain Cole. Lysander's mouth twitched, demanding to know the meaning of this. Sterling quickly chimed in, saying since they were there to learn, some sparring was inevitable, so he brought a few of his soldiers along. This unexpected speech left Lysander completely speechless. At that exact moment, the young instructor was leading the squad through a modified set of hand-to-hand combat drills. He had incorporated several Tai Chi techniques, making them spar in pairs. The moment Lysander pushed the door open, the training room looked like a circus. A bizarre array of postures and moves was on full display. Although Lysander had prepared himself, his vision still went dark for a second. Beside him, Captain Sterling immediately burst into booming laughter, asking what kind of combat training this was, calling it a circus. The young instructor immediately stepped forward, reporting that this was indeed real combat training, just with a slight variation. Lysander had reviewed his training plan but never expected the actual practice to look so incredibly unorthodox. Lysander angrily snapped that he was appointed to assist, not to goof around with these unpresentable stances. The instructor explained that this was just a cool-down relaxation exercise. He added that true combat did not look like this bizarre performance. Seeing so many uninvited guests, the young trainer easily guessed their bad intentions. They were here to mock them, or just like Thaddeus Stone did, probe their actual training progress. Behind the visiting commander stood a dozen fresh recruits, including a very familiar face. Baxter stood among them, winking frantically at him with an incredibly smug, satisfied expression. Captain. Sterling thought to himself that the rumors were just a game of telephone. Had he not come himself, he might have actually been fooled by this bunch of acrobats. Meanwhile, Lysander stared at him with a dark face, demanding a reasonable explanation, but the instructor hated wasting time on cheap talk, believing a live demonstration was far better. Before Lysander could even reply, Sterling eagerly interjected to agree. He demanded a demonstration to see the results. Hearing there was a chance to show off, Sterling's recruits eagerly volunteered to fight. Ultimately, Sterling scanned the room and hand-picked the medium-built, somewhat scrawny-looking Cassian and Zachary. When the rest saw this choice, they immediately lowered their heads, desperately trying to hold back their laughter. He truly had an eagle eye, choosing Caspian's direct disciple. Right off the bat, the instructor even asked him to confirm if he was absolutely sure about choosing those two. Sterling nodded firmly, insisting on them. The instructor simply shook his head as the crowd backed away to clear a sparring ring. The two captains sat down, one completely expressionless, the other looking smug. The instructor stood nearby. Lysander announces the start of the match. Both fighters take their combat stances, but the moment Cassian throws a punch, Zachary uses a serpentine footwork maneuver to completely dodge the strike. Zachary does not just retreat here, because during his fall back, he blocks Cassian with his calf while simultaneously throwing a counter punch. To anyone watching, this looks like a guaranteed hit, yet Cassian uses the classic principle of deflecting 1,000 pounds with 4 ounces, as if predicting his opponent's exact trajectory. He moves just a fraction of a second faster, burying a clean right hook squarely into Zachary's abdomen. Zachary wants to counter immediately, but Cassian is just too fast. Before Zachary can even execute his move, his entire body is sent flying backward. He crashes hard. Everyone is stunned. Only the recon company cheers. That prediction move was absolutely insane, truly worthy of the lead disciple title. Lysander and Sterling freeze. This is totally outside their calculations. However, Lysander's stiff expression finally softens slightly. At least they did not embarrass him. Sterling, on the other hand, looks at him with an increasingly complicated gaze. Old Cole, your soldiers seem to have been trained fiercely by Cassian. He asks if Cole dares let his boys spar with his squad. Lysander glances over Sterling's men, and every single one is built like brick outhouses. They came prepared. Before the military exercise, it is good to test each other's depths, Sterling says, his eyes locking onto him. He smiles back. Captain Sterling, this is a cadet sparring session. As an assistant instructor, it would not be appropriate for him to jump in, right? Sterling narrows his eyes, admitting he just wants to see how strong the assistant instructor is, asking if he plans to hide forever. Since it is a sparring match, he suggests letting others go first, taking the stage last. With things reaching this point, Sterling cannot really force the issue any further. Both sides quickly send out their powerhouse fighters, but Cassian does not even return to the lineup, simply staying in the ring. His opponent is an old acquaintance who now holds a brand new title, the artillery company's strongest rookie, Baxter. They lock eyes. Baxter immediately blows him a playful flying kiss. As squad leader Winston Hayes announces the start, both instantly slip into their peak combat states. Baxter's punches are just like his personality, fast, pretty ruthless, and highly precise. He aims a lightning-fast strike at Cassian's shoulder, but the microsecond Baxter's fist extends, Cassian drops low, driving his elbow forcefully into Baxter's arm. Caught off guard, his punch trajectory is derailed. Cassian strikes again. His punch lands solidly on Baxter's waist. Baxter staggers back a step, but still absorbs the full brunt of the blow, his face twisting in pain, wondering when he got this strong. Cassian smiles, calling it pretty average, but plenty to deal with him. Provoked, Baxter unleashes a furious flurry of rapid punches. Initially, Cassian focuses primarily on dodging, but after evading several strikes, Baxter's stamina begins to flag. Seizing the perfect opening, Cassian lands a solid kick directly on Baxter's calf. The two trade blows back and forth, The grueling exchange lasted over 2 minutes. Finally, Baxter's legs gave out and he collapsed to the floor, seeing stars. Even Cassian was panting heavily from sheer exhaustion. Captain Sterling's face twisted in complete shock. Cassian was reading his opponent's mind, predicting every single move before it even landed, launching a perfect counter-strategy in a split second. Refusing to back down, Sterling sent up 2 more soldiers to spar, but the recon fighters just played defense, completely dismantling every attack that came their way. Then, the moment the artillery soldiers lowered their guard, the recon guys unleashed a relentless, completely unpredictable counteroffensive. A couple of wins could be pure luck, but doing it repeatedly proved a clear pattern. Soon, all 3 matches ended in a total, humiliating defeat for the artillery company. The beaten soldiers slumped on the sidelines, groaning and rubbing their bruised arms and shoulders. Instantly, the expressions on the captain's faces were flipped completely once again. Talk about history repeating itself. It was just like when Thaddeus Stone showed up. Sterling stared right at Caspian, asking if an instructor must be way stronger than his men. Lysander grinned and patted Caspian's shoulder, since Captain Sterling was so curious. Why not give them a demonstration so they could fully accept this loss? Caspian agreed, telling them all to jump him at once. Hearing this, the artillery guys took instant offense. Did he seriously just ask the rest of them to attack him together? Talk about pure arrogance. Caspian simply replied that fighting them one-on-one was a massive waste of time, and they needed to keep moving with their training schedule. Looking at his calm face, the angry soldiers barely swallowed down their fury. Sterling scoffed coldly, agreeing to the challenge. Since the instructor was so confident, his men would happily oblige. He ordered his boys to group up, but warned them not to seriously hurt Caspian during the spar. Once Winston called start, all 7 soldiers surrounded Caspian. Now watch. Despite him standing right in front of them, they couldn't even graze his sleeve. Caspian moved with phantom-like agility, as several men swung at him simultaneously with explosive force. It was far beyond normal human speed. Caspian caught one man's arm and vaulted cleanly over his shoulder. In a split second, he broke their formation, using that same soldier as a meat shield while sticking to his back to feign attacks. Facing a 7-on-1 fight, Caspian handled them with absolute ease. Within a single minute, all 7 lay defeated on the cold ground. This time, Sterling was completely speechless. He could only stare at his elite squad groveling on the floor. Groaning in agony, Caspian barely broke a sweat, quietly dusting himself off. Standing nearby, Lysander worried Sterling would explode and take his rage out on the instructor, so he jumped in to block him, reminding his old friend that it was just a friendly spar. But Sterling was not listening. He bypassed Lysander completely and looked Caspian dead in the eye, asking him to teach some hand-to-hand combat to his artillery company instead. The room went completely silent. Was this stubborn captain actually trying to recruit him? Stealing talent right in front of them? Absolutely not. Caspian is their precious treasure. Just like that, the arrogant rivals have completely switched sides. Talk about a satisfying turnaround. Caspian looks over at Lysander awkwardly. Lysander is also staring at Sterling in absolute disbelief at this sudden twist. Sterling pats Caspian on the shoulder, admitting he had his doubts at first. Now he wants Caspian to visit his unit to teach his soldiers combat lessons. Caspian laughs inside. This guy changed his tune faster than flipping a pancake. Wasn't he just calling it a circus act? Barnaby stands there totally stunned. He silently roasts his captain. That is definitely not what they agreed on earlier. They were supposed to crush Caspian's arrogance and expose all his weaknesses. Instead, the captain joined the other side, even faster than the recruits did. It is completely off script, leaving them entirely unsure how to react. Moments later, Lysander speaks up, saying it depends heavily on their current schedule. Caspian is the assistant instructor now, meaning he runs the entire training program. Wade quickly backs him up. They must check Caspian's schedule first. Naturally, Caspian speaks up, suggesting they leave 2 soldiers behind to train. They can study as exchange students. Everyone blinks in absolute confusion at this. Since when does the military have study programs? Sterling jumps at the chance. Afraid Caspian will take it back, he quickly agrees to the deal. He leaves the entire room of bewildered officers staring at each other. Soon they select Caspian's old buddy Barnaby, along with their top combat specialist. Sterling has his own selfish calculations, knowing Barnaby and Caspian are close friends. Caspian will definitely put extra effort into training his friend with a solid foundation. Once they return, they can train the entire company to boost their power. These clever commanders are really pulling out every trick in the book. To save his own face, Lysander silently approves of the new arrangement. Word of the exchange program spreads, and other units start sending recruits. Soon, Tobias Wren, Julian Pierce, and Barnaby are all reunited. They end up in Caspian's training class, but with a massive twist. Now the roles are completely reversed, and it is brilliant. Instead, they are now recruits learning directly under Caspian's absolute authority. The massive annual military simulation is finally about to kick off. Their overall strength has soared, and Caspian is now a living legend. His name echoes across the base as the exercise details are finalized. Commander Lysander Cole holds a massive briefing for the entire recon company. This is a full-scale battlefield, even the culinary squad is deploying. It is a massive joint exercise involving 4 entire group armies. With vast terrain and giant scales, excitement fills the air immediately. Every soldier feels a rush of adrenaline at this thrilling news. Many soldiers just pray they survive long enough to avoid being early cannon fodder. They desperately want to avoid being taken out right off the bat. Lysander warns them not to rely on luck during this massive operation. No private should think they can simply hide and do nothing. In fact, true victory lies entirely in the hands of individual soldiers. Now the captain details the format of the competition. There's 76th Group Army and the 9th Group. Army will form the Red Army. Later, they will receive bullets that release red smoke along with armbands bearing the red insignia, their recon companies. Primary objective is pathfinding, relaying crucial intelligence back to the command center. Everyone must absolutely obey the command center's dispatch. Orders. After finishing the briefing, Lysander adds with pointed emphasis that while some possess extraordinary abilities, everyone must remember to do their designated jobs and obey orders. Cassian nudges him with his elbow and whispers that the commander is talking about him. He squeezes out a quiet threat through his teeth to shut up. The night before the exercise, everyone packs their gear in the dorm, needing to wake up at 4 a.m. To head out, their weapons are stored centrally to be distributed on site the next day. Wyatt says nervously that even if these exercises do not cause real harm, accidental injuries could still happen. Zachary Half jokes that bumps and bruises are normal in training, let alone during a massive exercise. He patiently explains that they generally only use blanks, which do not cause real damage. Heavy machinery like tanks use modified soft shell artillery, so there will definitely be no casualties, Captain Cole mentioned these soft shells during the meeting, but the others still do not fully grasp how they work. He tells them to picture a soft shell like a sponge ball. Inside, it is filled with colored smoke and powder. When it hits the target area, the impact triggers a switch, instantly releasing the powder and smoke. If anyone is in that blast radius, they are eliminated. At 4 a.m., everyone groggily boards the helicopters. Around 6 a.m., they arrive at the destination. Looking around, there is nothing but forests, low hills, and lush green vegetation with grass as tall as a person. Attending his first military exercise, Cassian excitedly notes that this feels like the perfect place to hide. First, they are assigned weapons, followed by their 3-day combat rations. He receives his rifle, weighs it slightly in his hands, and immediately senses that something is wrong with its stability. He finds the quartermaster and asks to exchange his rifle because of a major defect. The quartermaster glances at the serial number on the gun and says to hold on. While he swaps it in the armory, Cassian's rifle has issues as well. He notices that these rifles are not the current standard issue. They are obsolete models phased out years ago. He points out that both rifles are incorrect, asking if the new models have already been distributed and why they received outdated weapons. The quartermaster interrupts him with extreme impatience, snapping that they only distribute what they have. Who is he to dictate terms? He adds that he will swap defective guns, so cut the unnecessary chatter. Cassian wants to argue, but our main character stops him. He tells Cassian not to bother and to just wait for the replacements. The quartermaster takes their defective rifles, claiming he is heading to the warehouse. They wait a long time, but the guy never returns. And just like that, things go from bad to worse as the starting whistle suddenly blows, officially starting the exercise, with still absolutely no sign of the quartermaster. Seeing no sign of him, Caspian asked another logistics officer. "Excuse me," he asked. "That officer went to swap our rifles when—" "Will he be back?" the worker replied without even looking up, around. "Trip to the warehouse takes 10 minutes and it has only been 5, their squad mates. We're constantly rushing them." Cassian was pacing around like a cat on a hot tin. Roof, in his very first military exercise, he brought tons of ammo and grenades. But the most crucial item, his gun, was completely missing. Was this a joke before the match? His only goal was to avoid giving first blood. Now he was practically sprinting straight into the slaughterhouse. A nearby squad kept urging them, "You two, hurry up and stop dragging your feet. We have been waiting ages for you." Making a split-second decision, Caspian grabbed Cassian. "Let us go." Cassian looked at him in shock. "Are we really going without guns? Are we going to fight in this exercise completely barehanded?" Caspian replied calmly, "Do you have a better idea?" Cassian fell silent because he really did not. Everyone in their transport vehicle belonged to their squad. The orders were to proceed to a designated coordinate, assess the situation, and feed vital intel back to command. The vehicle drove steadily forward. Upon reaching the drop zone, Caspian pulled Cassian out of the vehicle. The others also scattered to find their positions. Talk about crazy. Nobody even noticed they were completely unarmed. Cassian was restless with anxiety. Caspian warned him to remember one thing. Victory or defeat is not decided at the starting line. Even without guns, it does not mean we cannot survive until the end, Cassian said pessimistically. "But what do we do? Even if we spot the enemy, we cannot attack." Cassian and Caspian each had 2 grenades, their absolute last lifeline, but the word surrender simply did not exist in the dictionary of Caspian Vance. He led Cassian to gather surrounding tall grass, weaving together a makeshift ghillie suit for himself. Then Caspian unraveled a thread from the hem of his t-shirt, combining it with a grenade to set up a tripwire trap. Cassian asked hesitantly, "Are we just waiting for a rabbit to crash into a tree trunk? Is this method a bit too stupid?" Caspian scoffed. "What do you know? What looks stupid is often the most practical." The two of them waited like this for an entire day. Cassian was so hungry he even ate a meal ration, yet they still had not seen a single shadow. The teammates who shared their transport vehicle had all reached their sectors and were slowly advancing the front line. Meanwhile, the two of them remained completely motionless, rooted like pine trees. It was not until past midnight that 2 figures were finally spotted slowly approaching their direction. Caspian pointed at the 2 approaching Blue Army soldiers. They were still some distance away from the trap. Judging by their current trajectory, it was highly likely they would bypass it entirely. Seeing Cassian's expression light up with excitement, the boy suddenly felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Caspian casually picked up a rock from the ground and tossed it toward the grass near the trap. The rock weighed down the grass, rolling slightly, creating the distinct illusion of rustling movement. In the brush, sure enough, the 2 soldiers changed direction, their eyes locking onto the rustling grass. They observed for a moment, but seeing no moving with extreme caution, they slowly headed toward the target. Suddenly, one of the soldiers felt a wire snag his leg. The next second, a grenade exploded right at their feet, instantly showering both of them in thick red smoke, standing engulfed in what looked like ghost fire in the pitch-black night. The 2 soldiers frantically raised their rifles, aiming blindly into the dark. Confusion, Rowan chuckled softly, signaling to Cassian that it was time to move. The pair walked right up to the eliminated Blue Army soldiers, telling them they were already dead and to relax. One frowned, asking if they set up the ambush. Cassian finally felt a rush of excitement, proudly asking who else would have done it. The blue soldier grumbled in annoyance, asking why they did not just shoot them down. Rowan stepped in, saying that if they actually had guns, they would not have bothered with the hassle. They were just waiting for them to deliver their weapons. The 2 captives were instantly stunned, asking if they wanted to steal those guns. Rowan smiled faintly, adding that they wanted their armbands too. The 2 enemies and even Cassian stared at Rowan simultaneously with complete disbelief. Their expressions were equally dumbfounded. The furious enemy snapped, calling them completely despicable. Rowan simply looked right back at him, coolly noting that a lot of times rules exist to be exploited. He demanded they hand over the weapons and armbands. Seething with frustration, the soldiers ground their teeth. and handed over their gear. Cassian and Rowan quickly swapped their red armbands for the blue ones, then the two of them swaggered away in plain sight as Cassian walked in a daze, still acting like he had just woken up from a dream. They actually weapons, Rowan confidently declared that guns were nothing compared to their next plan of storming their headquarters. Talk about a bold plan. Meanwhile, back at command, an officer reported that Recon Company was missing Caspian Vance and Rowan Brooks. Commander Thorne asked if they tried contacting them through other channels. They had no communications gear, leaving the command staff unable to establish contact. Commander Thorne dismissively told them to just assume they were eliminated and to exclude them from any strategic deployments. The officers around him shook their heads in pity, wondering how they lost contact so fast. Seeing their reactions, Commander Thorne curiously asked if there was something special about those two. Someone beside him quickly explained. Recently, a rookie had basically exploded onto the scene in the recruit company. Rumor had it his skills were completely on par with special forces, and he had even created his own unique combat styles. Hearing this, Commander Thorne instantly felt the description sounded insanely overpowered and oddly familiar. Pulling up Rowan's file, an officer noted he was a university student. He joined the military in his junior year, proving to be a pretty impressive guy, but Commander Thorne fell into deep thought, knowing that if Rowan really was that talented, he would not be easily eliminated. He wanted to see what kind of storm the rookie could brew up. Meanwhile, after hiding their red armbands, Rowan began reloading the magazines, alternating between red and blue bullets. Rowan asked if he understood, although Cassian did not grasp the logic. He knew following Rowan was never wrong. Rowan weighed the rifle in his hands, finding it miles better than their old guns, with lower recoil and higher stability. He reminds his partner that the first bullet in the chamber must be blue. That way, even if they hit the blue army, they can still blend in. Moving stealthily with careful stop and go paces, they spot an artillery company ahead. Cassian asks if they should move in, but he quickly shakes his head. Going right now is far too risky with all the friendly fire, so they must wait. Suddenly, the soldiers receive an order and start rushing toward the front. He orders Cassian to run straight toward the incoming artillery fire. Both sides clash fiercely, and the Red Army seems to be pushing much harder. The advancing Blue Army artillery is suddenly forced to pull back 500 meters. Deciding now is the perfect moment, he grabs Cassian by the dusty shoulder. Dirt on their faces, they sprint frantically straight toward the artillery company. Two figures suddenly emerging triggers a shout, demanding to know their unit. He yells back that they are infantry soldiers, scattered by the heavy mortar fire. The guards buy the story and tell them to quickly fall back. This spot is a major target and will be bombarded very soon. Unbelievable, they just walked right into the enemy camp without any suspicion. Cassian stares at him in sheer disbelief, his heart pounding in his chest. He whispers that his partner is an absolute legendary genius. But he shrugs it off casually because this is only step one. They still have to locate the main command center among multiple bases. For now, they are stuck in a highly crowded armored core base. Gripping their rifles, the duo blends in, acting like regular patrol guards. Strolling past the tents, Cassian's eyes keep darting around in absolute panic. Quietly, he warns his friend to calm down and act completely natural. Acting tense is the easiest way to get both of them killed. Cassian is practically tearing up from the sheer weight of the stress. To him, this feels like hand delivering their heads to the executioner. He wants to stay calm, but his shaking body refuses to cooperate. Meanwhile, our hero navigates the enemy camp with total confidence. Suddenly, an officer rushes out and orders them to help move supplies. Warehouse doors slide open, revealing piles of heavy artillery shells. Boxes are stacked high to the ceiling, filling the entire depot. The officer tells them to grab 5 crates for the front lines. They need to hurry, so he immediately asks which vehicle to take. The man points to a nearby jeep, saying its profile is less obvious. He responds with crisp military precision, confirming they will handle it. He tells the officer to go attend to other pressing duties. The officer warns them to be careful and asks if they know the route. He assures him that he knows exactly where to go. The second the officer leaves, he grins at Cassian at this golden opportunity. Pulling a thread from his shirt, he jams a grenade between crates. He ties the other end of the string near the entrance. Anyone walking in to grab a shell will inevitably trip the wire. Within a minute, they safely retreat, and Cassian asks how he did that. He wonders how he is so skilled at setting traps. He almost said practice makes perfect, but swallowed the words pivoting to survival skills instead. Meanwhile, the other Red Army teams, who took the stable route, had already suffered over 50% casualties. Wyatt's face was pure despair. Caspian had gotten separated from them the moment they got off the truck, and another recon teammate sighed deeply, guessing he was probably dead in a ditch somewhere from the barrage. That was so dense they barely managed to detour around it. Wyatt's initial burning enthusiasm had been utterly crushed by reality. They were supposedly recon scouts, but one wrong move made them basically human mine. Sweepers and several teammates had already been eliminated exactly like that. Zachary was one of them. Meanwhile, in the Red Army command room, Commander Thorne paced restlessly while looking at the virtual map tracking the enemy front line, asking if there was still no news from their ambush squad. The Red Army was employing a bait-and-switch tactic, having just sacrificed a squad as bait while sending a highly reliable squad through the forcibly opened gap to infiltrate the enemy lines. However, what they stumbled upon was the armored core base. Just as they neared it, they heard a massive explosion accompanied by a towering plume of red smoke. Even the ambush squad was dumbfounded, since they had not even fired a single shot. Did someone else just crash the Blue Army armored base? Then they heard someone screaming that the ammo depot just blew up and everyone should take cover. They had just set up their ambush positions, and the Blue Army instantly assumed they had not gone far. Although they had no idea who fired the shot, they instantly became the prime suspects in public enemy number one. Thankfully, there was a small hidden path nearby for retreat, but the relentless gunfire behind them almost left them permanently dead. A report came in of an attack on the base. Their ammo depot was presumed completely wiped out, though it was unclear who executed the strike. Commander Thorne asked in shock if it was not their team. Wondering if someone else was making moves, the ambush squad leader replied. Explaining details were unclear, but it was definitely red smoke. Commander Thorne was on the exact same wavelength, muttering if it could be Caspian Vance. A member of the ambush squad asked if he had dispatched another unit over there. But Commander Thorne felt that while it was probably Caspian, the odds were insanely low. He could not place too much hope on him just because of his past identity. He ordered them to ignore that, promising cover fire so they could proceed to the next base. Meanwhile, Caspian was currently driving a Blue Army jeep, leisurely cruising toward another camp. Soon they arrived at the next site, which looked like an infantry battalion. It consisted of a few utterly unremarkable tents. Caspian analyzed it with complete seriousness, doubting this was the headquarters. Normally, a command center is packed with high-tech monitors, precision electronic instruments, or giant screens, but looking at this place, there was absolutely nothing besides two tiny tents, barely big enough for two people to sleep in. How could the command center be in a place like this? After finishing his deduction, he looked at his companion, eagerly awaiting praise. They comforted him calmly, telling him his logic had some merit, but that was not how Caspian evaluated the site. Cassian instantly perked up, going on high alert. Was this really the command center, hiding in a tiny space using reverse psychology? Caspian rolled his eyes. Seriously, stop jumping at shadows to determine if it's a command post requires specific criteria, starting with the patrol guards and the perimeter scouts. They were within 500 meters of the camp, yet they had barely seen anyone. Clearly, the enemy didn't value this location. Next, check, look for large signal receivers and generators, which are almost always kept outside. Even if they are indoors, the tent would have to be substantially larger. This spot simply doesn't fit the bill. Then boom, a vehicle came roaring furiously right toward them. They swiftly abandoned their jeep, seeking a quick hiding spot. Fast swap armbands. Those are Red Army allies, their own people. Time to say hello. Caspian stood straight up, raising both hands above his head to announce himself. Naturally, the new arrival instinctively raised his rifle. A random stranger popping out of the wilderness, claiming to be friendly. That was incredibly suspicious. He barked questions about regiment, company, and identity. Caspian answered every single question flawlessly, causing the ambush squad to immediately relay the intel. When the Central Command Center heard the name Caspian Vance, their eyes lit up with excitement. Upon learning that the massive armored core ammo depot explosion was Caspian's doing, Commander Thorne sighed with massive relief, then asked if the duo wanted to merge with the ambush squad. Caspian refused. No way, he worked better solo. The annoyed ambush squad leader, Sergeant Trent, spoke up with clear displeasure. He warned Caspian not to act tough just for destroying a depot. Honestly, who did this new kid think he was, just ignoring Central Command? Suddenly, an authoritative voice crackled. It interrupted the speech. Thorne ordered Trent to let Caspian operate however he pleased. Trent was shocked, asking if the commander was really letting a rookie go rogue. Commander Thorne pondered for a moment, then ordered them to hand over comms. Radio, they would maintain direct contact with Caspian. Hearing this, Trent's glare deepened with complexity. He reluctantly ordered his teammate to hand over the radio. Caspian grabbed Cassian, who had barely dared to breathe this entire time, and headed back to the jeep. Only after they disappeared did Trent ask the commander what exactly Caspian Vance's background was. Commander Thorne replied that he was the ultimate rookie who dominated back in boot camp. Trent was stunned, refusing to believe there wasn't something more hidden up his sleeve, knowing Thorne never gave out free passes for no reason. Thorne chuckled warmly, insisting that really was all, though he was highly anticipating the kid's next move. Suddenly, an icy voice cut into their channel, thanking them for the attention and promising not to disappoint. Thorne and Trent were instantly paralyzed with sheer, heavy embarrassment. They forgot that the radio they handed over was tuned to their private command channel. Commander Thorne laughed awkwardly, explaining he was going to switch channels now and to report any updates directly to him. With a quick acknowledgement, the commander finally put down his mic. A sigh of relief, but Caspian wondered why he felt so incredibly guilty. Beside him, someone remarked that Caspian Vance definitely had a mind of his own. Pure trouble. Caspian originally wanted to stir up some chaos at that camp, but with the ambush squad arriving, he happily left the mess to them. Later, Caspian muttered that they really should have snatched some of their grenades. Meanwhile, Cassian sat in the passenger seat, his head spinning from the crazy ride. The poor guy felt completely disoriented, as if he were trapped in a dream. How had they somehow run straight into the commander's elite ambush squad? And how did Caspian just casually reject them and become a solo operative? Reporting directly to the commander, Caspian muttered with a face full of regret. Only 2 left. They had to make every single grenade count out here. Cassian looked completely baffled, asking if he even had the right to an opinion. Caspian was calling the shots anyway. Soon, complete darkness fell once again. Yet Caspian kept driving the jeep through the thick wilderness with his headlights off. Cassian buckled his seatbelt tight, desperately gripping the handle above the window. He screamed, asking if driving this fast in the pitch black was a death wish. Caspian calmly replied that he was in a hurry and that this darkness was nothing. To his enhanced eyes, it looked no different from broad daylight anyway. He had overheard chatter about another enemy base just a kilometer away. Cassian watched in horror as Caspian floored the gas pedal on the rugged terrain. Bounced around violently, he felt his soul literally leaving his body. He groaned that he seriously suspected Caspian was trying to murder him. Talk about a roller coaster straight from hell, he was practically begging for his life. Screech. Caspian slammed on the brakes, leaving Cassian completely white with fear. Before he could even scream, Caspian quickly shushed him. SHH, people nearby. He stepped out of the jeep, immediately activating his legendary Eagle Eye skill. Scanning 3 kilometers ahead, Caspian spotted a brightly lit camp in the midnight dark. Even though it was past midnight, people were constantly moving in and out. With perimeter scouts deployed a kilometer out, Caspian smiled, saying he had found it. Cassian was thrilled, eagerly asking if this was their headquarters and if they should attack. Caspian shook his head. No rush, they just needed to wait a bit longer. So Cassian found a spot, pulled out a compressed biscuit, and started munching. He ate as if they were on a picnic, making Caspian laugh at his attitude. Cassian's entire mentality had truly undergone a massive shift by now. He explained that he had finally made peace with his constant fear. By treating himself as already dead, he felt his borrowed time was a gift. No fear, this mindset allowed him to face death with absolute tranquility. Caspian gave Cassian a thumbs up in respect. Meanwhile, the Red Army was struggling. They were losing ground rapidly, while the Blue Army quickly adjusted after their loss. Using massive infantry waves, they began to flank the opposition from the outside. They deliberately abandoned 2 camps, playing a brilliant empty fort strategy. This was designed to draw enemy fire and the Red Army fell for it completely. They committed the bulk of their forces directly toward the bait, leaving themselves open. Their supply lines and reinforcements were instantly cut off by the waiting enemy. Now the Blue Army infantry acted like countless bullets aimed straight at their target. Army headquarters is in trouble, even with 2 decoy camps set up it is. Only a matter of time, soon the real base is discovered, through his earpiece. Caspian constantly hears grim updates on the Red Army's dire situation. Commander Thorn contacts Caspian, who reports that he has likely located the Blue Army headquarters. Hearing a constant stream of defeat, reports all. Night. Commander Thorn finally breathes a sigh of relief, leaving their headquarters to him. When asked if he can handle it, Caspian promises his best. Thorn orders him to give everything, even sending the ambush squad for backup. They will be under Caspian's command, but this extra help only gives him an instant headache. No backup. He prefers working completely solo. Commander Thorn and his staff tally their remaining forces, realization hitting that only a quarter of their manpower remains. The Blue Army is not faring much better. Besides Caspian and the ambush squad, they have other small units steadily advancing toward the enemy headquarters, but they suffer multiple brutal ambushes en route. By the time anyone nears the Blue Army headquarters, only a few men remain. Real trouble now. Hope rests entirely on Caspian Vance. Thorn repeatedly calls out, demanding an immediate status report. But the messages sink like stones, leaving Commander Thorn to face growing despair, wondering if defeat is inevitable. At that very moment, Caspian and Cassian swap back into blue armbands, strolling openly toward their target. Since this is a massive joint training exercise taking place between 2 armies, there are simply too many unfamiliar faces. Thus, they do not attract any suspicion, but upon entering the headquarters perimeter, they find the security to be incredibly tight. 2 entire rows of heavily armed soldiers stand in perfect formation, completely blocking access to the core command tent. Even patrol guards are forced to turn around before reaching that area. Time to improvise. Caspian must find a sneaky way inside. Even if he cannot get himself inside, a bullet or grenade must get in. He weighs the only 2 grenades left, ready to gamble everything on those explosives, but before making a move, he needs to confirm exactly how many people are in the tent to ensure he can strike within seconds. He wants to report to Commander Thorn, but upon grabbing his radio, he realizes they have installed signal jammers, completely blocking any equipment. Without a chip, no signal, he is completely on his own. He rips 2 lengths of thread from his shirt, rigging 1 grenade near the ammo stash. Before handing the pull string to Cassian, he plants the second grenade near the main entrance. With only 2 grenades, he must maximize their potential to draw the guards away from the headquarters. He still has his last 2 smoke grenades ready, knowing the success or failure of the mission rests on those strings. His hands begin to shake. Cassian is trembling. Caspian whispers to calm down and just wait for his signal. Then, using a vehicle inspection as cover, he climbs to a vantage point, peering through the gaps to get a clear view inside the tent. There are exactly 5 people inside, with 1 standing near the entrance, holding a rifle as a bodyguard. Among the remaining 4, 1 wears a cap with insignia that clearly identified him. This man was the ultimate target. Having locked onto his prey, Caspian crept closer to the tent and flashed a hand signal to Cassian. Cassian yanked the 2 strings one after another. 2 explosions rocked the small base simultaneously, causing instant panic. Within the camp, everyone stay alert. We are under attack. Protect headquarters. Do not let anyone near. Right before their eyes, thick white smoke began billowing in front of the headquarters. Oh crap, they are making their move. It is white smoke. Where is that bastard? Hold the door. If anyone tries to enter, shoot to kill. While everyone was frantically blocking the front entrance, Caspian had already shifted his angle of attack. Using the smoke grenade to blind their vision, he slipped around to the side of the tent. Through a small gap in the fabric, he slipped the barrel of his rifle inside, aiming squarely at the enemy's supreme commander. Bang! In that instant, the world seemed to stop. Shouts erupted from inside the command room. The commander has been hit. We lost. Where is the sniper? With so many of them guarding the place, how did nobody spot him? Acting like a complete phantom, he had already swapped back to his red armband, casually strolling out in front of the crowd, waving flamboyantly. Hello, everyone, he said. Instantly, over a dozen rifles and over a dozen murderous glares locked onto him. The assassinated Blue Army commander pushed open the tent flap and walked out. You are the one who fired that shot. Caspian nodded. What is your name? Declared with ringing clarity. I am Caspian Vance, Recon Company, 76th Group. Army. The commander repeated the oddly familiar name. Suddenly, he jerked his head up in shock. You are a rookie recruit and you took me out. Yes. Sir, the expressions on everyone's faces morphed from shock into pure horror. You infiltrated this place entirely alone. He waved toward Cassian, who was still hiding behind a vehicle. I have a comrade with me. The crowd initially assumed the comrade was some seasoned veteran who had made a name for himself in previous exercises. They did not expect a rather timid-looking guy to shuffle out. The Blue Army commander chuckled dryly. I thought old Thorn was going to lose to me again this year, just like last year. I did not expect him to deploy a hidden trump card, cultivating 2 elite operatives in secret to storm my headquarters. Meanwhile, the Red Army headquarters was under heavy siege. Report, Commander, the artillery company has fallen with less than 3 men remaining. Report, we have almost no recon scouts left. The enemy firepower is too intense. Their front line is pushing hard. They are right outside our gates. Commander Thorn felt like a ticking time bomb had been implanted in his skull. Every new update was another explosion. We lost contact with Caspian's squad. What about the other ambush squad? His subordinate panicked. Commander, they were captured by the enemy. They are hostages now. Commander Thorn slammed his fist on the desk. Fight to the death, even if it is a brutal slugfest. I have to make old Griffin taste our steel. Send the remaining tank units to Sector 3. Suddenly, a cluster of red signal flares bloomed in the sky. Everyone froze. His subordinate hurriedly called Commander Thorn outside to look. Commander Thorn squinted at the flares cut through the dark. What is going on? Did we run out of men? Could it be Caspian? Impossible. Commander Thorn quickly dismisses his own theory. He has fought Commander Griffin for years, knowing the man's defensive strategies inside out. Griffin would absolutely fortify his own headquarters with heavy troops. There were even rumors that Griffin deployed an impenetrable scout network. A complex 8-trigram defense surrounded his base. There was just no way Caspian and his partner could never breach a defense like that alone. Could Trent's squad have actually pulled off some miracle turnaround instead? While Thorn stands there completely baffled, his phone suddenly rings. Unsurprisingly, it is Commander Griffin. Old Thorn, you are pretty sharp this year. Griffin says he was caught completely off guard, but Thorn plays dumb. He cannot let his rival know. He has no idea how they won. Old Griffin, I told you not to underestimate me, Thorn brags back. He claims he had a killer trump card ready. Griffin just grunts. Griffin admits he is curious how Thorn got soldiers through his heavy siege. They marched right into his headquarters without a single unit of backup. Griffin asks if those 2 just spawned out of thin air. Hearing those keywords, Commander Thorn finally gets the confirmation he needed. It is definitely Caspian and Cassian who pulled off this impossible comeback. They actually clutched the victory, and Thorn bursts into hearty laughter. He acts smug, calling it a core strategic secret, but watch closely here. The background noise on Griffin's end goes dead silent as he steps away. Whispering into the receiver, Griffin asks if this Caspian Vance is that guy. Commander Thorn gives a serious nod, confirming that he is. Griffin's gaze deepens, admitting he had no idea the kid was this powerful. He grumbles that Thorn's victory this year was just pure dumb luck. Thorn's face turns completely green. What the hell do you mean by that? Caspian took you out under my command, so stop erasing my leadership. Griffin just laughs, an internationally ranked top 7 mercenary on his own. Someone capable of wiping out an entire city completely single-handedly. Do you honestly think he needed your instructions to find my headquarters? Thorn is left absolutely speechless, with zero room for a comeback. Still, he stubbornly bites back, claiming dumb luck is also a skill. It is not his fault Caspian chose his unit. You owe me those 2 bottles. This time it is Commander Griffin's turn to be completely silent. Meanwhile, the other soldiers see the flares and stand there completely bewildered. The eliminated Red Army soldiers start cheering wildly in their containment zone. Insane, they yell. They actually pulled off an impossible comeback. And the exercise is already over in under 3 days. Lysander Cole sighs softly, looking at his gathered company. He hoped they would hold out longer so they would not meet here so early. But instead, the whole gang is already present in the graveyard. Wyatt replies helplessly that they had no choice as frontline recon scouts. They were prime targets for feeding first blood to the enemy. Zachary looks around, noting Caspian and Cassian must still be alive. Must be nice, some mutter enviously. Look at their level of participation. They survived to the very end and basically got a free ride to victory. Someone suddenly speaks up. Caspian is so strong. Do you think he was the one who eliminated the Blue Army? Commander, the second those words leave his mouth, the surrounding crowd erupts into booming laughter. All right, there's a limit to joking around. Caspian is strong, sure, but listen to yourself. You sound like you are daydreaming. Meanwhile, only Lysander Cole's expression remains incredibly complicated. Once the exercise wraps up, the Red and Blue armies head back to their designated assembly areas. Suddenly, a lone off-road jeep drives toward them. From the distance, everyone looks to see who is making such a grand entrance. Looking at the plates, it is a vehicle from the other group army. Are they coming to pick a fight out of bitterness? Standing at the front of the formation, Commander Thorne also glares at the approaching vehicle with clear displeasure. A random car crashing his home turf, that is way too arrogant. Suddenly, the passenger and rear doors all swing open. At the same time, the crowd eagerly cranes their necks to see the gate crashers. To everyone's shock, two incredibly familiar faces step out: Caspian and Cassian. What is going on? Did they defect to the enemy? The guy next to him slaps the back of his head, asking him to think of a better scenario. Lysander Cole also stares at Caspian in absolute shock. And get this, Commander Griffin pushes open the other. Cash and Caspian stand in a straight line, saluting Commander Thorne. Report: due to logistical travel delays, we are late for assembly. Commander Thorne's face is not looking very good. Commander Griffin personally escorting his men back. Is he trying to prove a point? Caspian Vance, Rowan Brooks return to formation. Commander Thorne thinks Griffin is going to gloat or make some passive-aggressive remarks. Instead, Griffin simply smiles and tells old Thorne he brought his men back. He has an urgent meeting to attend, so he will be taking his leave. Only then does Commander Thorne's expression soften slightly. After Griffin's vehicle drives away, many pairs of eyes shift back to Caspian. Commander Thorne clears his throat. Assuming everyone knows the result of this exercise, the Red Army is victorious. Thunderous applause erupts from the troops. Commander Thorne looks at the crowd with satisfaction. Everyone performed exceptionally well during this exercise. However, it also exposed several issues. He concisely summarizes, pointing out the major flaws and ordering every company to conduct thorough reviews based on the day's flaws. Finally, his gaze lands on Caspian. Thorne asks how he feels about his own performance this time. Report: Commander, my performance was strictly average. Commander Thorne pauses, an amused smile playing on his lips. There is no need for false modesty. Taking out the enemy commander with a single shot is fully deserving of everyone's praise. You can practically hear a pin drop as the onlookers watching the show feel their scalps go numb. Upon hearing this, somebody starts clapping, and soon the entire crowd is clapping frantically, looking at Caspian with pure admiration, but his response is, report: there were still areas where I underperformed. Otherwise, my efficiency would have been much higher. At the start of the exercise, I did not have. Later, when he met up with the ambush squad, he completely forgot to ask them for grenades. Otherwise, he could have wrapped up the exercise much sooner instead of dragging it out. Wait, did he really start the exercise without a weapon? Then what was around his neck? He was speaking perfect Viridian, but this felt like the ultimate humble brag. Commander Thorne's face darkened as he asked what happened to the original rifle. Cassian calmly explained that his issued rifle was structurally defective and highly unstable. He had requested a replacement, but the new weapon never arrived before the drill started. This time, the surrounding crowd of soldiers stood utterly flabbergasted. Who starts on absolute hell mode and still pulls off a masterclass carry? Someone could not hold back and asked if he really survived till the end with just 2 grenades. To be exact, they had 4, since Cassian and his partner carried 2 each. Everyone stared blankly at the sky, wondering how they were even supposed to respond to that. Commander Thorne finally realized that something here was seriously off. He examined Cassian's rifle, comparing it to the weapons held by the other soldiers. The models were drastically different, prompting Thorne to whisper a few quiet words to an aide. The assistant immediately hurried off as the commander turned back to the crowd. He announced that everyone could rest and the mess hall would host a massive banquet. Tomorrow morning, all soldiers would head back to their respective bases. With everyone dismissed, Thorn ordered Caspian Vance to follow him. Caspian followed the stern commander into his private office, sitting upright on the sofa. Thorn cut straight to the point, stating he knew Caspian's background was far from simple. He demanded to know the young soldier's true motive for joining the military. Caspian paused, then earnestly stated he only wished to serve his country. To him, Viridia's standing was absolute paramount. Thorn scrutinized him closely. He tried to detect any ripple of deceit before asking about the upcoming special forces. Caspian merely nodded, confirming his awareness while Thorn took a slow sip of tea. With a knowing smile on his face, the commander asked if he would sign up. Caspian confirmed he would, wanting to earn his spot through the grueling selection process. Thorn called him a walking cheat code, questioning if fairness even mattered. The commander questioned if playing fair and square held any meaning for someone like him. Caspian played dumb, asserting that true strength must be forged by oneself. To him, taking part in the upcoming selection was only natural. Thorn mentally called him a clever punk for playing dumb, but let it slide. He warned Caspian to be careful after making such a massive scene. Shining this brightly in a major military exercise meant countless eyes would watch him now. Thorn was curious to see how he would handle it, especially with his past. Since his mercenary account, Reborn, was still actively taking commissions. Thorn shot him a deeply meaningful smile, keeping his eyes locked on him. Though he valued talent, an enigma like Caspian had to be kept on a tight leash. Walking out of the office, a sudden realization hit Caspian like a physical blow. He had completely forgotten to deactivate his active mercenary commission status. If he stayed active, both the military and the police would watch him constantly. He cursed his own carelessness for forgetting such a vital detail in all the rush. Leaving the account active without replying would severely tank his hard-earned mercenary ranking. With his ranking set, the recon company gathered around the warm bonfire that evening. They sit together, swapping stories. One guy admits he had a massive schoolyard hero complex. He had to throw punches at every injustice, ending up beaten straight into the hospital. The crowd erupts in laughter. Unbothered, the guy just grins at his own past. His family had no idea what to do, fearing his hero complex would get him killed. So they shipped him straight to the army. Suddenly, another recruit starts teasing him. Weren't you supposed to be a hero, but got eliminated on day one? What kind of hero gives up first blood immediately? You're basically the enemy's hero. You must feel a huge sense of accomplishment, he jokes, sparking more laughter. Laughter rings around the fire. When it's Caspian's turn, he looks a bit sheepish. He explains he just heard the saying about regretting joining for 2 years. But skip it and you regret it for life. Those words instantly strike a chord. Those words ignite a wave of passionate agreement, but Caspian looks at him seriously. Caspian asks Caspian if he will still consider returning to school. Will he really go back once those 2 years are up? The question catches Caspian completely off guard. He has no real answer. Even though he wants to sign up for the special forces, he feels unsure. He constantly doubts himself, feeling like he just isn't strong enough yet. Zachary instantly feels indignant, telling Caspian that talk like that is infuriating. If a guy who ranks near the top of the overall scores says that, does that mean the rest of them don't even have the right to sign up? Caspian blushes awkwardly. Caspian speaks up, telling him he needs to think carefully. His goal must stay absolute. If he wavers, he will lose his drive. Suddenly, a dark-skinned soldier with small, focused eyes stands up to speak. He admits he joined up because he was constantly targeted by bullies. Honestly, looking at those massive muscles, who would ever suspect he was bullied? His family actually got incredibly rich off a massive demolition buyout. Afterward, his parents shoved him into a newly built, elite private school. Bullying wasn't physical or verbal, but rather complete, brutal isolation. He had to endure looks of sheer disdain despite being a naturally outgoing guy. He didn't make a single friend and eventually, he just couldn't take it anymore. After a massive fight with his father, he dropped out of school entirely. Then he saw a retired soldier walking past, wearing a big red rosette. Everyone was cheering and clapping. In that exact moment, his path became clear. Another refined, scholarly young man speaks up to share his own story. He's a huge military nerd whose ultimate dream was flying fighter jets. But he failed the strict medical metrics, crushing his hopes of joining the Air Force. Still, he believes he can shine anywhere as long as he is serving. He wants to stay in the military forever. His name is Elliot Finch. He even underwent laser eye surgery specifically to qualify for active duty. Listening to them feels like peering through a window into their pasts. Though their starting points were vastly different, fate brought them to this campfire. Here they shed the aggressive, hostile shields they used to wear. By opening up, they finally step directly into each other's hearts. Finally, it's Caspian's turn. Someone cheers, calling him insanely strong. They ask if he has been training at home for some secret reason. He thinks about it for a second. World peace. He obviously can't tell them the truth. If he told them, he would probably scare them half to death. Having witnessed the horrors of war zones countless times, he truly feels that. Viridia is an incredibly lucky nation. No wars, no riots. It is all thanks to the relentless efforts of the Viridian military, but he can't exactly say that his goal is to genuinely help Viridia openly and honorably instead of sneaking around with fake aliases. The next day, everyone returns to their respective bases. Lysander Cole pulls him aside for another talk, saying he absolutely must keep a low profile since they know his past exploits. He continues to play deaf and dumb. Lysander rolls his eyes in exasperation. In the period leading up to the Special Forces selection, many soldiers beg him to increase their training intensity. Now, besides training his own company, he also reconnects with his old squadmates from boot camp. Barnaby, Julian, Tobias, and the rest. They all want to participate in the Special Forces selection. Since his daytime hours are locked, he can only run intense boot camps for them at night. As a result, Barnaby shows up with massive dark circles under his eyes every day, earning him a scolding from the artillery captain. Barnaby, are you turning into a nocturnal rat? Is the daytime training not enough for you? If you don't make it into the Special Forces Brigade this year, you will do a massive disservice to all that sleep you are losing. Barnaby, dizzy with exhaustion, does not even process the heavy sarcasm. He squints his eyes, yawns, and mumbles, "Thank you for the blessing, Captain." Captain Sterling is speechless. Having him is a real blessing upon his life. The number of applicants from the recon company reaches historic highs. When Lysander sees the towering stack of application forms, even he is shocked. The total number of applicants from recon this year could probably break a world record. Still, he is immensely proud that his men have such courage and confidence. A week before the official selection, Commander Thorne gathers all the applicants to brief them on the trials. First, there will be an intelligence test. A few guys who have been massive slackers in school instantly pull bitter faces, complaining they are doomed. They start sweating the moment they see a page full of words. Lysander adds that the specific format changes every year, but not to worry. The difficulty is not that high. Honestly, does that make anyone feel better? They just feel nervous. Lysander then outlines other trials, mostly physical endurance and even a wilderness survival segment. A special forces operative is not alone. Wolf, many selection trials will test the synergy between teammates. You have not had specialized training for this, so the difficulty will not be astronomical. Everyone mentally sketches a rough outline of the competition in their heads, but overwhelmingly, they just feel nervous, seeing their heavy expressions. Lysander suddenly smiles, promising a little surprise. He has 30 balls in this box. Inside each ball is a slip of paper, the one that says pass will grant the sole automatic nomination slot for the recon company. The moment the words drop, the crowd erupts into howling cheers. Are you serious? One of them jokingly begs his ancestors to let him draw the winning pass. In 20 years of life, he had never even won a free bottle cap from a bottle of iced tea. But he was channeling all his accumulated luck into this moment, smiling faintly. He never expected Lysander to skip preselecting candidates and use a lottery instead. But the captain warned them, don't celebrate yet. This nomination guarantees nothing. You only bypass the initial trials. And you still have to survive the brutal training afterward. The recruits lined up. When his turn came, things got interesting. Lysander grunted as the others complained about their bad luck. Recruits openly lamented their bad luck, eagerly waiting to see who would draw the winning ball. Some joked they would declare the winner their mortal enemy. Then, the reveals began. One by one, the balls were popped open, but still, nothing appeared. They wondered if the captain forgot it, until they noticed one final ball remaining. It sat unopened right in front of our protagonist. If he drew it, they were doomed. They felt like background characters. His skills outclassed theirs, and now this. Losing to him in pure luck on top of everything was simply too much. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he slowly popped his ball open. It was a pass. The entire room collectively lost their minds. Some cried out about the lack of justice, while he stared at the paper, speechless. Even Captain Lysander could not hold back, noting his crazy luck. Our protagonist paused, then offered to draw again. He chose to forfeit. Lysander's jaw dropped, and the others looked completely baffled. They asked why he was throwing away this golden, cooked duck of an opportunity. If it were them, they would sleep with that ball under their pillows tonight. But he simply explained he wanted to experience the highly stimulating trials. Talk about a true elite flex. The crowd fell completely silent at his insane mindset. It was truly a brain circuitry, incomprehensible to mere mortals. By now, Captain Lysander had pretty much figured out his unique temper. Knowing he genuinely did not need the shortcut, the captain initiated a redraw. This time the winner was Elliot Finch, a recruit he remembered quite well. He was the aspiring Air Force pilot who had undergone LASIK surgery. In his nervousness, he subconsciously tried to push up glasses he no longer wore. His neck flushed pink with pure excitement as he celebrated his unbelievable luck. Then the lucky winner turned toward our protagonist and gave him a deep, respectful bow. He thanked him for the opportunity, but our protagonist just waved it off. He told Elliot to make it to the very end, and Elliot smiled warmly. The lucky winner promised to give it his absolute all, a few days later. It was the day before the Special Forces selection, and everyone packed. Wyatt kissed a pendant, holding it tightly in his hands as he prayed. Our protagonist walked over, curious if the necklace carried some special meaning. Wyatt smiled sheepishly, explaining his mother got it for him before he enlisted. His mother had visited a temple to pray that he would stay safe and healthy. But Wyatt was still quite nervous. His hands were shaking as he packed. Early the next morning, the recruits grabbed their gear and boarded the bus. Over 30 people sat in silence, but less than 30 minutes into the drive, the bus suddenly ground to a halt, leaving everyone wondering what was happening. Cassian asks if they are supposed to drive 3 or 4 hours to the selection site. Is this a test? Is it starting this early? Cassian grabs his shirt in sheer panic. Nervous, he mutters that they are ignoring the rules. Does the selection start right now? But he remains exceptionally calm. Honestly, the test already began the moment they stepped onto this bus. Suddenly, a group of men with fierce, intimidating eyes board the bus. One of them carries a long, jagged scar, shaped like a snake, across his hand. He orders everyone off the bus immediately. There are 5 vehicles parked below, so get into groups of 6. The crowd stares at the bizarre assortment of vehicles: a minivan, a pickup truck, an electric tricycle, and a box truck. Someone asks if they choose for themselves. The scarred man smirks, telling them to choose. Hearing they can choose, everyone immediately swarms him. Which one is he taking? They beg to join him, pleading not to be left behind. Everyone desperately wants to team up with him. He picks the pickup truck. The others scramble into the truck bed behind him, while the rest form close groups. But right after everyone finishes forming their squads, the scarred man ruthlessly pulls 2 people from every vehicle and swaps them around. Next second, he grabs him and tosses him directly onto the electric tricycle. The already cramped cargo bed is suffocatingly tight with 4 other men wearing massive rucksacks. Seeing him, they hurriedly squeeze together to make a tiny sliver of space for him. He doesn't really know them. He has to admit Scarface has a real gift for ruining teamwork. Nobody speaks during the ride, likely intimidated by his powerful aura. The electric tricycle clearly lacks horsepower, and the tires are completely underinflated. The moment they all piled in, it instantly sank halfway down. A deadpan man in plain clothes drives the tricycle. The wind blasts their faces. They feel cold on the outside and dead on the inside. All the vehicles depart simultaneously. Their open-air convertible electric tricycle falls dead last. The moment they accelerate, they ride all the way until the sun sets, finally spotting the streetlights of a city. The group is starving, and he asks what they are eating tonight and where they are sleeping. The driver replies nonchalantly that he doesn't know. Everyone's faces turn dark. You drove us all the way out here and know nothing. However, he realizes this is part of the trial. When asked if they can leave, Scarface replies that he doesn't care, but they must wear this smartwatch. He needs to contact them. Immediately, the other 4 stare at the watch, feeling like the guy is intentionally messing with them. He asks what time he will contact them. Tomorrow, and roughly where. The man gives a sleazy smile, saying he doesn't know. He nods saying he is leaving. The other four grind their teeth in frustration, asking where he is going, obviously to find food and a place to sleep. One of them asks suspiciously what if they wander too far, and he demands they travel a massive distance tomorrow morning. What then? He gestures to their surroundings. If they want to sleep here, fine, but he won't. With that, he hoists his rucksack and walks away. The other four hesitate, even though they know he is incredibly capable. They are not exactly close to him, so they did not feel comfortable begging him to take them. Long after some thinking, they also embarked on their own wandering journey. Once everyone had dispersed, the scarred man picked up his radio. He contacts Firespire, reporting that the target group of 5 has departed. Tracking is active. The radio immediately crackles back with a confirmation. Real-time locations of all 5 targets are now sharing to his device. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., the first objective starts. Meanwhile, he strolled leisurely down the street. From 7 p.m. to nearly 9 p.m., he finally found an old noodle stand run by an elderly man. There was only one customer, a middle-aged man eating noodles while scrolling on his phone. Occasionally bursting into loud laughter, he walked up and asked softly, explaining that he has no money and asking for plain boiled noodles in exchange for fixing things around the shop. Seeing his plain clothes and massive backpack, the old man felt a surge of pity, but the other customer on his phone warns the old man to be careful of scammers. He mocks a young guy with working limbs who cannot even afford a $3 bowl of noodles. The old man does not mind, telling him to sit and wait. He walks over to the old man and starts fixing his light bulb and gas stove. In no time they are working perfectly. Delighted, the old man brings over a steaming bowl of noodles topped with a fried egg. His heart warms as he tells the old man there is no need to thank him. With his hunger sorted, he now needs a place to crash for the night. Coincidentally, he walks past an internet cafe and heads inside. The girl at the front desk asks if he is there to game solo. He thinks for a second and asks if they need any computer maintenance. She frowns and asks what his deal is, but then someone yells out, complaining about the lagging internet. He quickly steps in to help, offering to take a look, mentioning that he majored in computer science. The girl looks at him skeptically as he masterfully pulls up a command interface, and suddenly the PC is running buttery smooth. Convinced of his skills, the girl points out a few other problematic machines. He fixes them all in 15 minutes, saving the cafe over $100 in repair fees. Thrilled, she boots up a PC, giving him 3 free hours of gaming. He thanks her. After confirming his smartwatch only has basic tracking and calling functions, he logs onto the computer. Using layers of IP spoofing, he logs into his Reborn dark web account. Once online, he sees his unread messages have maxed out at 99+. He simply posts a single status update telling people not to bother him. He sets his commission board to auto-reject all incoming requests and swiftly logs off. Having handled his business, he leans back in the comfy gaming chair and falls asleep. But get this, his quiet log-off just triggered an absolute earthquake at the security bureau in Linping. An urgent report arrives. Reborn just came online. Director Zhao slams his desk in sheer disbelief. Impossible, he has not been online in over half a year. Isn't he currently serving in the military? The operative looks stressed, confirming he definitely came. He is online, sir. Director Zhao's heart, relaxed for months, suddenly jumps. It leaps straight into his throat as the operative pulls up the screen. The post says, busy studying lately, do not bother me. Director Zhao frowns, trying to decipher the play. He demands a thorough investigation. There is no way he logged in after all this time just for a status update. After analyzing it for ages, the operative finally speaks up. But the target shut down his comms. Nobody can contact him. Director Zhao stares at the screen with a complex expression. Finally, he contacts Cassian's designated handler, Agent Scarface. Viper is immediately dispatched to his location. Caspian Vance's current spot, internet cafe. Viper curses internally. Can this kid seriously not give anyone a break? Viper barely lay down to rest, and he is already stirring up chaos. Real trouble. He marches in, checking row by row, until he finally spots Cassian sleeping soundly in a corner booth against the wall. The monitor is still on, displaying the game over screen for Puzzle Bobble. Grinding his teeth in anger, Viper wakes him up. Cassian snaps his eyes open. Assembly time, Viper demands. Furious, Viper drags him out, shoving him into the car, asking if he just logged onto the dark web. Cassian puts on a mask of pure innocence, claiming no, but Viper asks if he is sure since Reborn just came online. Cassian steps out and Reborn magically logs in. What is the reason? Cassian pretends to think hard about it, suggesting maybe the hacker forgot his account, remembered it, and logged in. To check, Viper narrows his eyes, glaring at Cassian with sheer intimidation. Viper asks about Reborn's objective. Cassian stretches his arms lazily, saying maybe the guy is just quitting the internet for good. Helpless, Viper has no choice but to let him go, and get this, Cassian strolls right back to comfortably resume his nap. Meanwhile, the others have a profoundly miserable night. Cassian, Wyatt, and Zachary formed a squad and sneaked into a mall food court. The three stare dejectedly at a half-eaten bowl of rice left on a table. Talk about rock bottom, times are tough, and they cannot starve. Cassian stares at the strangers' leftovers, feeling incredibly nauseous as people walking past cast disgusted, pitying glances. He feels like he is sitting on a bed of nails, thinking about how someone else already ate from it. Makes Cassian feel like he is eating spit. Wyatt and Zachary are entirely unfazed, even picking food from each other's bowls to mix flavors. Zachary looks up from his food for a split second, asking if Cassian has ever had a girlfriend. Cassian freezes, wondering how he knew. Zachary reasons that dating means kissing, which is the same. He tells Cassian to treat this leftover bowl as romance practice. Cassian is speechless. Cassian dryly thanks them, never imagining romance practice meant eating a stranger's leftovers. Wyatt cannot stand the whining and tells him to be grateful. They have food now, but who knows what they will find in a few days. Wyatt mentions that during jungle missions, soldiers eat whatever they can find, like frogs and massive spiders. Hearing this, Cassian shivers violently, wondering if it is truly that terrifying. Wyatt glares right back. It was dead serious. The human body needs protein, meaning they had to find some protein-rich bugs. Under relentless peer pressure, Cassian finally closed his eyes tight and swallowed the leftover rice without chewing, while Wyatt and Zachary basically treated the situation like a massive open buffet. After clearing his table, they quickly moved to scavenge leftovers from another. The majority of the other candidates chose to sleep rough at train stations or subway entrances. The more experienced candidates staked out convenience stores late at night, waiting for expired 24-hour Odin to be thrown out. The lucky ones managed to snag 2 hot skewers. On day 1 of this trial, they deeply felt the cold, harsh reality of the real world. At 6 a.m. the next morning, everyone's smartwatch buzzed simultaneously, ordering them to assemble at the coordinates in 30 minutes. Cassian quickly checked location, 10 kilometers away. He immediately cursed under his breath. Viper definitely knew where he was staying yesterday and did this on purpose, forcing him to cross 10 kilometers in 30 minutes as deliberate sabotage. His 4 other teammates were not faring any better after they split up. The previous night, they slept outside a subway entrance near a lady selling grilled sausages. They literally swallowed their saliva and just stared at her until she closed her shop, finally taking pity and giving them 1 sausage each, telling them that begging was a poor path for strong young men. The 4 did not care about the misunderstanding, devouring the food like starved wolves. Honestly, if anyone offered them a hot sausage, they would gladly accept being called beggars, but nobody else did. They had originally assumed the assembly point would be close to where their car was parked, but to their horror, it was 7 kilometers away. The 4 had no choice but to sprint. Cassian, however, checked the map first and mentally charted the shortest route with the fewest traffic lights. Early morning joggers and elderly folks out for a stroll only saw a blur of lightning rush past, wondering what the hell that was, or if their eyes were playing tricks on them. His brain acted like a GPS, navigating his route while constantly calculating the remaining time. When the system warned him he only had 50 minutes, he snapped, "Stop ticking." The countdown ticking like a bomb was extremely annoying. The system immediately adapted, changing the format to flash once every minute. With 3 minutes left, he finally saw the destination just as his watch buzzed, warning that anyone who failed to arrive before the 3-minute countdown ended would be instantly disqualified. Seriously ruthless out the gate, but as he neared the finish line, he got caught at a massive intersection right as the light turned red, urging it to turn green. His frustration mounted, and just as he Was about to curse out loud, the light finally changed. His systems. Countdown was at exactly 40 seconds. He bolted across the intersection, blowing past his 4 panting teammates, and with exactly 5 seconds to spare, he reached. Man first, he rested his hands on his knees, took a single breath to adjust, and instantly looked like a completely normal person, not even breathing. Heavily, Viper looked at him with a half-smile, thinking he was truly an elite. Our protagonist was the furthest away, logically speaking, no matter how fast. He ran, he shouldn't have made it. Viper clearly underestimated him. The other 4 barely managed to scrape by, collapsing the moment they arrived, completely exhausted and groaning in pure agony on the ground. They literally feel like they are dying, while Viper coldly looks down. Get up, he orders, stop wasting time. The first objective is simple. Find 5 people and get their phone numbers. The recruits stare blankly. But they cannot ask just anyone. Viper will designate the targets. He orders them to turn around and face the shopping mall. It is 6:30 a.m., and the area is practically empty. Viper postpones the task, realizing there are barely any people out there. Instead, they must prepare for when the supermarket opens at 7:30. Between 7:30 and 8, a batch of items will be discounted. The recruits have to memorize every single price on his digital list. He will spot check them at 8 a.m. The protagonist is surprised. He expected a written exam, not some strange grocery fieldwork training. The other 4 are drowning in despair, completely baffled by this task. Seriously, what does memorizing discount prices have to do with special forces? Yesterday was wilderness survival, and today they are studying supermarket sales. They wonder if the instructor is just trying to torture them with food. The protagonist wants to remind them this is actually a mental test. But he decides to stay quiet and let them complain instead. He watches his teammates drag their exhausted bodies toward the entrance. Their faces completely pale with the dread of a looming pop quiz. They have no idea that memorizing prices is a total joke to him. His mind is already trained to decrypt complex maps and tactical codes. A few simple grocery items are absolutely nothing compared to that. He casually stretches and steps through the glass doors at 7:30. From the street, Viper tracks his every move with cold, scarred eyes. This bizarre supermarket run is only the prologue to a brutal nightmare. The true selection is about to push them to their absolute limits. And as his hidden system quietly hums to life in his mind, our main character smirks, ready to face this ridiculous test.